Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by Jiao Chao Mo. Chapter 421-450. Chapter 421 Inches Listener. Ramsay ordered the transport ship to set off again to mine siren dust. He and 5 librarians each led a team into the void. A librarian holding an Osiris staff of mind control led 2 small teams to jump out of the transport ship. The mystery prior opened his Eye of Secrets, and curiously looked at the gray substance drifting in the void. In his sight, the dust rapidly floated up like willow catkins, instantly condensing into an invisible, magnificent figure. The magnificent figure he saw made the mystery prior's body tremble slightly, and he immediately closed his Eye of Secrets. The librarian ascended to the 3rd level of Telema's mental state, expelling the terrifying magnificent figure from his mind. He opened the librarian's communication channel and said, "I saw a magnificent figure." Seconds later, another librarian's voice sounded, "I saw a ship being torn apart." Ramsay aggregated all the information to continue refining his understanding of the unknown power. The listener activated his listening ability, listening to his surroundings. "You will release me. You will receive my bestowal, gain incomparable power. Now, I'll give you a little benefit first, even if it's just a little, it will give you great power. You will understand." The listener's listening became clearer and clearer, and he felt a slight dissolving sensation within his body. The unknown mysterious existence seemed to know he could hear the sound and threw bait at him. The listener's body trembled as he listened to the whispers of the mysterious existence. The muscles on his back gathered towards his shoulder blades, chest, and other areas. This ability is like the siren dust before you. The gibberish you utter will make your enemies fall into a dream. What's more powerful than siren dust is that whoever hears your gibberish will become obsessed with what they most desire and never wake up. After their consciousness falls into a dream, their bodies will seem to fall into silence, unable to move, until you kill them. They will not wake up. The listener's spirituality rapidly depleted, and the content of his listening abruptly stopped. Bioenergy surged within Ramsay's body, instantly smoothing his numb temples, and the gathered muscles also relaxed. Uranus V, territory of the Othello family. Great Patriarch, Ning Lu said with a smile to the exceptionally handsome man in front of him, who wore a crown and showed no signs of malignant mutation. "Through the banquet and today's communication, we have reached a consensus. Next, my attendant, Shedan, will fully represent me in negotiating the specific details of the alliance with the Othello family. I believe that in the future, we will cooperate extensively in the Obscurus sector." In Ning Lu's memory, the future known roots of the Othello family connected thousands of worlds. They had extensive commercial contracts in regions such as the Calixus sector and the Coronis expanse with families like the von Valancius family, the Galeatus family, the Hodina family, and the Drotus family. They were the most powerful and largest family among the navigator families who invited him this time. "Lord Ning Lu, I wish us both success in our future cooperation." Ning Lu walked towards the tarmac, where he saw over 20 elegant aircraft parked. Their unique wing shape was similar to the Imperial Skyhawk. The Skyhawk shuttle exported by Alicia had become the favorite aircraft of the Imperial nobility, and many members of the navigator families were no exception. Ning Lu boarded the black aircraft that matched his physique. Its size was twice that of the other models around it. The black Skyhawk shuttle took off, reaching its maximum speed in tens of seconds, leaving a yellow Skyhawk shuttle that took off later far behind. The normal Skyhawk shuttle has a flight speed of 1,900 km per hour. Perturbo's designed version has a 54% performance increase, boosting the speed to 2,926 km per hour. Rosicki Czech replaced the Black Emperor's mount's power heart with a miniaturized version of the Punishment class reactor. The Heavens Punishment class provides ample energy for the aircraft, further enhancing the Skyhawk shuttle's performance, with a minimum flight speed exceeding 3,000 km per hour. The increase in range was even greater. A normal Skyhawk shuttle has a maximum atmospheric range of 2,400 kilometers. Perturbo's designed version, although it improved energy utilization, consumed more energy for its performance boost, so its maximum range decreased instead of increasing, dropping to 2,200 kilometers. The Heaven's Punishment class reactor increased the Skyhawk shuttle's maximum range to 5,200 kilometers. As the Skyhawk shuttle rapidly flew towards the Wangquan shadow in orbit, Ning Lu heard a prayer in his ear. Open black lens bracket Ramsey, close black lens bracket. Ning Lu drew Jushin's spear from behind his back, walked to the cabin door, and as he pulled open the door, his hand slipped, and Jushin's spear fell into the void. A newly promoted honor guard member from the 5th battle group let out an exclamation. "Father, I will retrieve it for you." Ning Lu shook his head slightly. "No need, it will be back in my hands tomorrow." Returning to his personal office on the Wangquan shadow, Ning Lu had a thought and arrived in the Nation of Disorder. He came to the 4th spatial layer, his spirituality extending towards the dark red light sphere. After collecting 130 bottles of siren dust, he listened to Ramsey's report. Open black lens bracket magnificent figure, star god's temptation, close black lens bracket. He had a thought and instructed. The ability you listened to is the reward he gave you in advance, and it's also to make you serve him, a display of great power shown to you beforehand. It's a common tactic of theirs. Ning Lu knew that in the future, in Pharos, after the shard of Overlord Zahorish devoured other star god shards and became the supreme star god, he first gave Dora Kor much knowledge, then drove him to help himself escape. Dora Kor disguised himself as his servant, reaped benefits, and finally backstabbed the Overlord. Continue to listen carefully. Ning Lu then extended his spirituality again, touching the swindler's light sphere. Finding him alone in his office, frowning deeply, he directly pulled him into the Nation of Disorder. Tierney was swallowed by black mist, quickly recovering from his contemplation, and he knelt on one knee. "My lord, how is the treasure hunting group doing recently?" Ning Lu asked. "My lord, after the Kamag family and Marquis Deliquis discovered they were deceived, they gathered many families to conduct a search. Their forces are vast, and the treasure hunting group's several activities on Terra were discovered, forcing them to abandon their operations. No matter. You end your activities on Terra and return to the Wangquan shadow. Afterward, I will give you new tasks." In Ning Lu's plan, the treasure hunting group would play a role in Gardinal. "As you command, my lord." Tierney accepted the order and was then sent back to the real world by Ning Lu. Ramsey obeyed the Black Emperor's command, leading his team to continue collecting siren dust and listening to the whispers of the unknown existence. 15 days later, the listener acquired the full content of the star god's spoken abilities through listening. On the 16th day, the star god's voice sounded in Ramsey's ear. "I am." Chapter 422, Silent Babel. In the solar system, within a 3,000-kilometer radius of the Gate of Ecstasy, the wandering gray matter generated by thousands of years of void ship passage had diminished by more than half, making the entire space appear somewhat clearer. The listener had, over 15 days, grasped the bait offered by the unknown star god. On this day, as he listened, he heard entirely new content. "I am Caligula, the silent terror." The listener's mind stirred, and he mused inwardly. Open black lens bracket The silent terror is not one of the star god's father mentioned. Silent tear and siren dust are two terms that can be linked. When ordinary people touch siren dust, they lose interest in other things, which can also be seen as a form of silence. Close black lens bracket. I am the true God, the living embodiment of this universe. You are to go here, I will be there to bestow upon you supreme power. You will liberate me, I will travel the galaxy and reunite with my various parts. As the secret supplicant heard these words, his body felt as if stars were shattering, and countless voices echoed in his ears. He, a lost, pitiful being, presuming to be a god. He can grant you great power, what will you do? Quote. As if hearing his innermost thoughts, a majestic voice resonated in his ears. The warp is all illusion, I am the form and manifestation of this universe's existence. I am Caligula, the silent tear, I am a star god, I am the tide of stars and time. I am God, and you will serve me. Set me free. The listener did not respond. He ascended to the third mental state of telema, making the voices in his ears disappear. He no longer listened. Although, listening to the silent tear's voice granted him, silent Babel, the power bestowed upon him by the Black Emperor was far greater. Silent Babel was the name he gave to the ability he acquired after learning that the mysterious entity was a star god named Silent Tear. More importantly, he would never betray the Black Emperor to become a slave to a star god shard. Ramsay opened his eyes, startled to see tiny particles arrayed before him, forming an image. He found the pathway before him somewhat familiar. He paused for a moment before realizing it was similar to the star maps he had recorded as a scribes. Open black lens bracket. The silent tear is manipulating siren dust to show me the star system where he is trapped. Close black lens bracket. What is that? A mystery prior looked at the void in astonishment. The dust in the void rapidly arranged itself in a strange manner, forming an image that made one suspect a large hand was controlling it. Ramsay did not explain but issued an order. Record it. The librarians collectively entered Magnus's first mental state, imprinting the image formed by the siren dust into their minds. As the gray matter dispersed and began to wander again, Ramsay gave the order to stop. He commanded all librarians to sketch the star map they had seen, then, after comparing and confirming its accuracy, ordered a return to the Wenquan shadow. Ramsay quickly completed the ritual preparations. After offering sacrifices to the Black Emperor, he clasped his hands together in prayer. My lord, the unknown entity has revealed his true face to me. Black mist engulfed Ramsay. When he came to his senses, he was already in the nation of disorder. Ning Lu sat high on the throne and questioned Ramsay. Who is he? Caligula, the silent tear. Hearing Ramsay's reply, Ning Lu nodded slightly. Open black lens bracket. The silent tear and siren dust indeed bear some resemblance. I remember the silent tear was very special. After he was shattered, Shrek, the silent king, forbade any space Necron's dynasty from using him. He was imprisoned on a planet that later became an imperial prison world called the Scourging of Saint Athena, which future Black Templar warriors visited. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, Ramsay pulled out a data pad. My lord, the silent tear has shown me the star map leading to his imprisoned world. Please examine it. The gene seed Primarch's telekinesis extended, bringing the data pad before him. After browsing it, he mused inwardly. Open black lens bracket. It's not the Scourging of Saint Athena. Is this where the escaped shard was sealed after the great battle at the Gate of Ecstasy? Close black lens bracket. After reaching his conclusion, Ning Lu instructed. Record it in a data crystal. After facing a supreme star god, Ning Lu assessed his own strength and currently lacked the confidence to acquire it. Although also a supreme star god, the silent tear might be much weaker than the void dragon, but he was still a powerful entity. The data crystals produced by the Round Spider Alliance and Crystal Mirage allowed the Order Shadows to record all important information in data crystals. Star maps naturally belonged to important, high-value information and would be recorded in the librarian. Ning Lu now had 4 confirmed assets, awaiting acquisition. He predicted that the easiest to obtain, and the most impactful on the Second Randan War, was the doomsday weapon of Vigilance Star, the Void Claw. The giant octopus worshipped by the fishmen of Necromunda, although he was confident in dealing with it, his immense size meant combat might damage the ecosystem. Ning Lu would only act when he possessed the ability to quickly kill him. The 2 supreme star gods, the Silent Tear, whose location he had just obtained, and the Void Dragon within the Yemen Jia Xing Kong Ju Shi Bei in the Attila Galaxy, were stronger, and he currently lacked the confidence to face them. Ning Lu reined in his thoughts and looked at the listener before him. Seeing his unified dark red aura, he spoke. You have mastered the new power I bestowed upon you. I am happy for you. Remaining in the listener state for too long was dangerous. He required Ramsay to pray and report daily to ensure his safety. Now that Ramsay had digested the potion, he no longer needed to worry about it. Soon, I will bestow new power upon you. Thank you, my lord, Ramsay said devoutly after expressing his gratitude, then reported, My lord, I have named the ability obtained from the silent tier, Silent Babel. I wish to offer this power to you. Begin, Ning Lu said casually, leaning back on the throne. If he were in the real world, he would cautiously ascend to the second mental state of Telema, but in the nation of disorder, the ability Ramsay used posed no threat to him. The listener took a deep breath, his throat vibrating, emitting a supernatural babbling sound. A cacophony of soft, rambling voices echoed in Ning Lu's ears. His thoughts froze, as if everything around him fell into silence, and he briefly lost consciousness due to this silence. Immediately, Ning Lu's consciousness returned. He looked at the listener and praised him. A good ability. For most enemies, it will be more useful than your biopsionics. It's even stronger than the ability I am about to bestow upon you, but your spirituality can only sustain this ability for a very short time. You must grasp the timing of its use. Ning Lu recalled the babbling sound from earlier in his mind. Open black lens bracket. When a star god uses this power, it originates from their own strength. When Ramsay and I use it, unlike a star god, we use spirituality to replicate and simulate this ability. Although it may not be as potent as when Caligula, who controls silence, employs it, this is still a powerful ability, even surpassing my current Sequence 6 Beander abilities. Moreover, by continuously replaying it in my mind, I can master Silent Babel, close black lens bracket. My lord, I understand. Ramsay felt that his spirituality had been depleted in just a few breaths. He was not disheartened that Silent Babel had no effect on the Black Emperor. In his heart, the Black Emperor was the most powerful being. Since the Black Emperor said, Silent Babel was a powerful ability, he had no doubts. He mused inwardly. Open black lens bracket powerful, but I can only use it briefly. I must use it at the right time. Close black lens bracket. After sending Ramsay back to reality, Ning Lu immediately went to the first layer of space. He instructed the space monkey to use shadow worms and other materials to prepare the Sequence 7 Shadow Ascetic Potion. A moment later, Ramsay received a bottle of potion. The potion was black-red, reflecting his many faces. The faces seemed to be in shadow, indistinct. Ramsay drank the potion, advancing to Shadow Ascetic at the same moment, at the spaceport on Mars. Sage Aken land boarded his ship. The information sent back by the first group of Mechanicus members confirmed a perplexing truth. The Squat League possessed many technologies similar to sacred construction templates but more advanced. Land was heading to the Galaxy Center to explore its mysteries. Chapter 423 Another Divination to intercept Guilliman. In the 12th month of 852, Ning Lu concluded his visits to the navigator families on the moons of Uranus. He signed alliances with 10 of these families, with the agreements made with Othello and 2 other families being deep alliances similar to that with the Vischer family. 240 Order Shadows became new Shadow Guards, stationed by the navigators to gain experience. Partial cooperation agreements were signed with the other 7 families. Ning Lu provided protection to the navigator families in exchange for their services and the exchange of star charts they possessed within a certain scope. After personally attending and signing the alliance agreements with Othello and the 2 other navigator families, the Wenquan Shadow immediately set sail. After ordering the shield to be opened, the Gene Seed Primarch's gaze penetrated the void. He saw that most of the gray matter accumulated over thousands of years in the stellar region around the Gate of Ecstasy had disappeared. As if a veil had been removed, structures like Star Fortress became much clearer. Correspondingly, tens of thousands of bottles of siren dust were poured into the nation of disorder, forming a sea of sand. Ning Lu withdrew his gaze and walked back to his throne. Arsena Dun followed him to the throne. My lord, there is something worthy of your attention. The 11th Battle Group has continuously participated in all recent Legion campaigns, and its current strength has dropped to 20,400 men. According to the rate of troop replenishment in worlds like Vostronia, it is estimated that it will take 3 replenishment cycles for the numbers to reach 30,000. The 3rd, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th battle groups, rooted in conscription worlds, have received a large number of suitable troop supplements, and their numbers have all reached 30,000. The 1st battle group has been rooted in Alicia for a shorter time, but also has 25,000 men. The 11th battle group, which uses Vostronia as its conscription world, should have also had over 30,000 troops, but after participating in a series of major battles, it requires a longer time to complete replenishment. I know. I will find a new conscription world for the 11th battle group. Ning Lu left the Jushan spear on the throne and then returned to his private office. With a thought, he arrived in the Nation of Disorder. Ning Lu arrived in the 3rd layer of space and found that the divination dice had finished charging. Information about Aventinium that he knew flashed quickly through his mind. The affluent Aventinium, whose noble class possesses profound cultural heritage and noble temperament. Ning Lu decided that the new conscription world for the 11th battle group would be Aventinium, the homeworld of the future, brass administrator. He thought to himself, open black lens bracket, this is another divination to intercept Guilliman. I didn't want to, but Aventinium is too suitable for the 11th battle group, which primarily follows the Black Emperor pathway, close black lens bracket. Members of the brass administrator demonstrated unique noble demeanor and mastery of etiquette at court banquets, which aligns with the Black Emperor pathway's emphasis on order and associated noble ranks. Ning Lu did not know much about Aventinium, but the divination dice had already proven that as long as the divination object could be clearly defined, the divination could be completed. After quickly going through it in his mind, he silently recited, open black lens bracket, the star chart from Carium Gate to Aventinium. Close black lens bracket. After reciting it 11 times, he threw the divination dice in his hand. After tumbling several times in the air, as the triangular prism landed in Ning Lu's open hand, a holographic projection-like scene unfolded before his eyes. After recording the star chart, Ning Lu input it into a data crystal. He returned to the real world and used his mind link to have John perform a divination. The brain cat grabbed a quill and wrote a short line on parchment. He then leaned back on the bed to perform a dream divination. Tens of seconds later, John's mind was empty, with no images appearing. After sensing this through the mind link, Ning Lu thought to himself, open black lens bracket, John's divination ability comes from sequence 8 feet robot. The strengthening he gained in this aspect after advancing to Lucky 1 was not much, so he couldn't divine any useful information. Close black lens bracket. With a thought, Ning Lu went to the 4th layer of space in the Nation of Disorder, and his spirituality spread, touching Perkasielny's black light sphere. He saw Pell standing on the top of the tower, gazing into the distance. At the same moment, in Vostronia, Shadow Fortress, the 11th auxiliary tower stood obliquely. Pell stood on the top of the tower, gazing at the training ground several kilometers away, where candidates who had undergone several modification surgeries were practicing Osber Vaya. Every Vostonian practices the way of Osber Vaya. Youngsters aspiring to become Order Shadows or Auxiliary Army begin practicing in childhood. Pell's gaze was drawn to the two fiercely fighting individuals in the center of the field. A blonde candidate held a longsword. He suddenly stepped forward, launching a swift thrust using Osber Vaya, Article 1, a stabbing attack. The movements, repeated thousands of times, were already etched into his body. The longsword in his hand was as swift as a venomous snake, aimed directly at his opponent's throat. Another blue-eyed candidate met the attack with his sword, using Osber Vaya, Article 6. Their blades clashed, parrying the longsword. The two candidates switched offense and defense. The blonde candidate, using Osber Vaya, Article 12, spun rapidly, his footsteps swiftly dodging the blue-eyed candidate's continuous thrusts launched using Osber Vaya, Article 16. Blades clashed, and the ringing of swords during their exchange was continuous. Pell nodded with satisfaction. The future recruits of the battle group had their swordsmanship fundamentals honed quite well. They searched for each other's weaknesses during offense and defense, launching decisive strikes. Open black lens bracket. It's just that the replenishment speed is a bit slow. My battle group was originally the largest in number, but after a series of major battles, the replenishment speed can no longer keep up with the consumption. Close black lens bracket. As Pell pondered, black mist surged before his eyes, engulfing him in an instant. Pell found himself in a mysterious realm. He bowed to the throne. My lord. Ning Luo's telekinesis spread, sending a data crystal in front of Pell. You will personally lead half of the battle group to Aventinium and occupy this wealthy world. It will serve as the battle group's conscription world. John had not divined the situation in Aventinium. After careful consideration, Ning Luo decided to let Pell go personally. Only new members from the noble class will be selected, and they will undergo strict training from childhood. By the time they become Order Shadows, they will be exceptional individuals with exquisite swordsmanship and superb marksmanship. This is exactly what I have been pondering recently. I will act immediately upon my return. Pell replied. He hadn't expected his worries to be resolved so quickly. After Pell returned to the real world, he immediately deployed the battle group's forces. The 11th Battle Group's fleet set sail 3 days later. After a 2-week journey, the fleet arrived at Carium Gate. In just 5 sun weeks, the fleet was projected to Aventinium. On the bridge throne of the Relic-class battleship, Son of Vostronia, Pell gave the order. Augur Matrix, maximum power scan. First Company Captain Gibbs reviewed the navigator's report and couldn't help but exclaim. When we last passed through Carium Gate, only 2 pairs of warp gates had been repaired. To complete this journey back then would have taken at least 6 sun weeks. Pell nodded and said confidently, in the future, travel time will become shorter and shorter. Once Carium Gate is fully repaired, interstar system projection will even be faster than warp travel through adjacent star systems via stable warp routes. Pell envisioned the future, a scene where the Legion's battleships quickly reached various parts of the galaxy through Carium Gate, and a smile involuntarily appeared on his face. A moment later, the voice of the Sound Array Master sounded in his communication earpiece. Lord, the Augur Matrix class master reports that Aventinium is in a state of war. Chapter 424, Yellow Robe Cult, Wendao School. The small fleet in Aventinium's orbit hasn't moved. They haven't reacted to our appearance nor have they taken action to respond to the ground war, Percasielny said in a deep voice, examining the video screen. What's happening on the ground? The Augur Matrix analysts believe that a civil war has broken out in Aventinium, the Sound Array Master said. As you can see, the orbital fleet is still present, and Augur Matrix scans show that the orbital defense facilities are still operational. The current situation could be due to internal strife in Aventinium, causing confusion and indecision within the orbital fleet as to whose orders to follow. Send a full-spectrum broadcast, demanding the orbital fleet surrender to us and immediately cease their civil war, Pell ordered. The 11th Battle Group's fleet spread out, steadily approaching Aventinium. 41 warships, nearly 3 times the size of Aventinium's fleet, put pressure on the defending fleet. The fleet commander nervously watched the holographic screen, a looping voice echoing in his ear. We are the Order Shadows, the descendants of the great Gene Seed Primarch, the King of Vostronia, and we demand your immediate surrender. The Order Shadows are. The fleet commander examined the video screen. The enemy fleet was not only more numerous but also comprised much larger warship classes than his own fleet. His flagship was at least equal to or smaller than 25 other warships in the enemy fleet. Performed tactical maneuvers around the orbital defense facilities. More concerning than the powerful enemy fleet were the contradictory orders he received from the Council and the Yellow Robe Cult. The Yellow Robe Cult, which rose to prominence 1500 years ago, advocated eugenics and intelligence, playing a decisive role in Aventinium's rise. They cultivated a large number of elites, and even many noble families in the Noble Council were affiliated with the Yellow Robe Cult. Over 1,000 years of development, the Yellow Robe Cult had infiltrated every aspect of Aventinium. Not long ago, the Yellow Robe Cult launched a coup, instantly plunging the entire Aventinium into chaos. Although the fleet commander's family, the Osorbal family, was not affiliated with the Yellow Robe cult. They recognized its ideals, and the family did not take sides in the struggle. Osorbal put on his helmet, switched to his family's private channel, and sent a message to his family. A force calling themselves the Order Shadows, 11th Battle Group has suddenly appeared in the star system. They possess a powerful fleet. If we wish to resist, relying solely on my fleet is impossible. We need the support of the entire Aventinium. Please, Patriarch, make a decision immediately. Osorbal attached the received audio message to the end of the communication and sent it to his family patriarch. Osorbal nervously stared at the video screen, waiting for his patriarch's command. He knew the Order Shadows fleet would not give him much time. The clock's seconds ticked by. After 2 full rotations, a weary, aged voice echoed in Osorbal's helmet. Delay them. Currently, both the nobles and the Yellow Robe cult are fighting in all 36 Hive cities, and neither side has gained an advantage. You will not receive any support. Be prepared, the conflict is likely to spread to the ground-based anti-air arrays soon. Osorbal remained silent for a few seconds. He wanted to roar in frustration. He was utterly powerless to defend Aventinium's airspace, but he knew roaring was useless. His patriarch was also powerless to change the current situation. The Osorbal family joining either side would not tip the scales against the other faction. Losing composure would only attract the attention of other officers and cause panic. Osorbal took off his helmet. He took a deep breath to calm himself, then gave orders to the communications chief in a steady voice. Send a message to the other side. We need 3 days to consider. On the Vostonia's sun, Pell heard the sound array master's report and a slight twitch appeared at the corner of his mouth. They really think I'm a puppet. Tell them they only have 30 minutes. Also, tell them we already know Aventinium is in a civil war. If they want to end the internal strife quickly, their best option is to surrender and cooperate with us. Gibbs heard Pell's order and agreed, saying, the orbital fleet commander should not belong to either side of the civil war. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken no action. In Aventinium now, both sides of the civil war are focused on each other, and third parties are also affected, unable to make quick decisions. Acting now, we can win most quickly and with the least cost. I think they will neither agree nor refuse. They will send 1 or more warships to test our attitude, Pell said, devising a counter-strategy based on the opponent's conflicted state of mind. Artillery chief, prepare to fire. Guards, prepare to board. We will seize the enemy warships with lightning speed, giving them no time to think, or even resist. Pell immediately walked to the tactical table, staring at the holographic image. Aventinium's flagship, Osorbal, gave the order. Send 2 warships, activate ether shields, and test the enemy's reaction. The Yellow Robe cult's promotion of intellectual development, the concept of scholar supremacy, and the application of psychic power had given Aventinium's void ships a unique technology, the ether shield. The distance between the 2 sides was over 40,000 kilometers. Even piercing the ether shield's defense would not be easy. He could use this time to complete the delay mission his patriarch had given him. If the enemy was forced to retreat by his firm stance, that would be an unexpected bonus, and he would become a great hero of Aventinium. On the Vostonia's sun, Pell saw 2 warships. Based on the Auspex's scanned signals, one corresponded to an Imperial frigate class, and the other to a destroyer class. Artillery chief, open fire. The Relic-class battleship's prow lance crossed the void, striking the frigate. A dazzling light bloomed in the void. Pell saw flashing feedback images on the video screen above the tactical table. He switched his communication headset channel and gave orders to the adjutant in charge of the mimic chamber. Lance attack ineffective, analyze. Just 2 seconds later, 3 Order Shadows squads, led by a reader and specialized in warship command, along with 50 auxiliary army officers, completed the analysis of the battlefield data. My lord, the Aventinium fleet is using a special energy shield. Based on readings, it should be using ether technology. Recommended attack with ether cannon. Predicted probability of piercing enemy shield, 94%. The reader concisely and orderly completed the report, interpreting, analyzing, and offering suggestions to support Pell's decision-making. Artillery Chief, Ether Cannon, Fire. On the Vostonia's sun, the ether cannons mounted on both sides below the hull flashed with dazzling light from their muzzles. Aventinium Fleet's flagship, Osorbil, was astonished to see two beams with abnormal readings flash across the screen, slamming into the frigate. Then, the enemy ship emitted a blinding beam, with readings identical to the energy weapon whose attack had been ineffective just moments ago. But this time, the beam fiercely pierced the frigate he had sent out. He lost the frigate. He lost the destroyer. The enemy fleet suddenly accelerated, and countless cannons opened fire on his fleet. Report. Mid-deck A-13 under attack. Deck breached. Enemy forces have entered the warship. Report. Upper deck A-5 has fallen. After a moment of stunned silence, Osorbil weakly gave the order. Surrender. He felt a sense of relief. The next moment, light flashed, and he closed his eyes slightly, adjusting to the sudden blinding light in the bridge. Pell, wearing Saturn pattern Terminator armor, walked in front of him. You made a wise choice. Now tell me, what happened in Aventinium? 1 standard hour later, Pell teleported back to the Vostonia's sun. Before giving the orbital drop order, he went to the altar to pray to the Black Emperor. Nation of disorder, Ning Lu thought to himself after hearing Pell's report. Yellow robe cult, psychic powers, advocating eugenics and intelligence. Wendao School. Chapter 425, Precise and Swift Hunt. The yellow robe cult indigenous to Aventinium should be a branch of the Wendao School. Percasielny felt very unfamiliar with the Vostonian words spoken by the Black Emperor. Wendao School. The Wendao School originated in the ancient times of Terra. They attempted to build a tower of chaos passageways, which was destroyed by the Emperor leading his army. Ning Lu, who was plotting the dark utterances, carefully avoided mentioning her person. Person had been active in the auxiliary army under his real name. He believed that, apart from his good friend Huang Laohan and John Grammaticus, no one would still remember his name. Although unlikely, if Pell were to encounter Person and alert him, it would affect his plan. Ning Lu would only tell Pell the necessary knowledge he needed to know. The Gene Seed Primarch sent the relevant knowledge of chaos to Pell in the form of thought impulses. The imperial truth propagated by the Emperor conceals the fact that life exists in the warp. Warp creatures are born from the emotions and mental energy of intelligent beings in the real world. Among them, the most powerful existences are called the Chaos Gods. They are referred to as the primordial annihilators by those who discovered their existence, such as the Thousand Suns. Pell's pupils constricted. He said in surprise, so the imperial truth is completely a lie. After learning of the Black Emperor's existence, Pell no longer believed in the imperial truth, but he hadn't expected that there were even deities in the warp. As he pondered, Ning Lu spoke again. The current goal of the Wendao School is to use the power of chaos to liberate humanity from what they perceive as the oppression of imperial dogma. The Wendao School operates a network of academies, cultivating disciples who advance their chaos caused by combining psychic powers, eugenics, and intellect. Every graduate is a highly intelligent and dangerous individual. As Ning Lu spoke, Zygmunt Malik flashed through his mind. He had used a series of schemes to become a virtual god. The legendary Inquisitor, Gideon Ravenor, an alpha-level psyker, interrupted him at the critical moment of the ritual. Open black lens bracket. The Wendao School members on Aventinium won't have Malik's capabilities, but they must still be dealt with. Close black lens bracket. The yellow robe cult should be a branch of the Wendao School. To quickly pacify Aventinium, they must be found. The Midas once developed devices to search for psychers among various races. I will bestow them upon you. If you use them well, you will be able to find the cult members hidden among the populace. Although the Legion's Beyonder development had already entered its second phase, with each battle group forming around a core of main Beyonders, supplemented by Beyonders of other pathways. The 11th battle group had 52 sheriffs, but they couldn't cover all parts of the Hive City and also needed time to familiarize themselves with their jurisdiction. To quickly eliminate Yellow Robe cult members, the Midas's psyker searching devices were more effective. My lord, with the Midas's psyker devices, I will surely uproot the Yellow Robe cult, Pell said. Beware of dark utterances. That is a powerful force, Ning Lu warned. If you encounter an enemy who uses language to affect the structure of reality, you must kill him as quickly as possible. My lord, I understand, Pell replied solemnly, hearing the Black Emperor's serious admonition. Black mist engulfed Pell. When he came to, he was already on the altar. Pell piously clasped his hands in an inverted prayer to the Black Emperor. Moments later, a great wind spontaneously generated from the altar, and objects of varying sizes flew out from an opened invisible door. 1 Terran hour later, the 11th Battle Group's drop pods rained down on Aventinium. 1st Company Captain Gibbs, leading his guard members, landed in the second-largest hive city. After leaping out of the drop pod, Gibbs looked around. What met his eyes was a scene of chaos, burning houses, screaming residents fleeing in all directions. Gibbs gave the order, detect, confirm target. A guard member held a half-body-sized disc, the largest model among the Midas psyker searching devices. The guard member pressed the activation button in the center of the disc. Runes flashed on the surrounding screen, then the entire screen lit up. Having been trained, he knew that the center position represented him and would change with his movement. On the green screen, he saw a flashing red dot. After discerning the direction, he said in the team's communication channel, 4 o'clock direction, 1 target. Move out, Gibbs ordered. As a barbarian, Gibbs, wearing a Saturn-type Terminator, strode forward, moving faster than a squad wearing Iron Rider Terminator armor. The guard members advanced towards the 4 o'clock direction. The guard member holding the Midas psyker searching device, by repeatedly comparing the distance traveled, confirmed that the distance between the circular dashed lines on the instrument was 1.5 kilometers. The team was moving directly towards the target, so the direction naturally became 12 o'clock. He saw the target 2 rings away and immediately reported it in the communication channel. 3 kilometers, target is not moving. Keep advancing, Gibbs ordered, prepare to open fire. The order shadows raised their bolt guns, marching forward to the loud singing of the bard. Hundreds of rebels raised their firearms, firing a dense barrage of bullets at the black armor warriors from all directions. The logging guns made a clattering sound. Amidst the saw-like noise, bullets struck the black armor, then ricocheted off. The Cyclone missiles on the shoulders of 5 Iron Rider Terminator armor units aimed at the rebels in the stronghold. The missiles, trailing exhaust, slammed into the densest concentration of rebels. Boom! Amidst the explosions, buildings were blown away, and dozens of rebels were torn apart by the shockwave. Amidst the roar of bolt guns, the hunter and warrior drew their power swords and charged at the surviving rebels. Gibbs led his team, breaking through the rebel lines and advancing towards the target. When he was still 1 kilometer from the target, he locked onto a Yellow Robe cult member wearing a yellow robe. The person held a gun in one hand and a staff in the other. The Saturn-type Terminator's reactor roared, and its automatic targeting system locked onto the Yellow Robe cult member. The plasma bombardment cannon roared, firing at the enemy. A scorching beam of light slammed into the Yellow Robe cult psyker. His robes were instantly torn to shreds, and his body ignited with orange flames. Amidst the explosion, his right shoulder and a large part of his chest vanished. The Yellow Robe cult psyker raised his staff, and a large shower of flames rained down from the sky. Burning orange flames rained down on the guard members. Several guard members were struck by a series of orange fireballs. He quickly activated his personal energy shield, and a shimmering light enveloped his body. Amidst the roaring explosions, the Iron Rider Terminator armor shook violently. Seeing his attack was ineffective, the psyker's eyes flashed with dazzling white light, concentrating his attack on one black armor warrior. Dozens of orange fireballs slammed into the energy shield. Amidst the booming of a dozen fireballs, the shimmering personal energy shield shattered with a crash. The remaining fireballs enveloped the black armor. The Iron Rider Terminator armor melted rapidly in the orange flames. The Order shadow was instantly incinerated into charred bones, scattering on the ground. Gibbs strode forward. He raised his right arm, and the heavy disintegration cannon fired a barrage of projectiles at the yellow robe cult psyker. Bang! 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 The psyker was hit by the cannon shells, repeatedly being blown back. With each explosion, large chunks of flesh were torn from his body. In an instant, his body was charred black. The psyker gave up attacking the other black armor warriors. His staff pointed at the towering giant. Orange flames rained down on Gibbs, making a series of booming sounds just as they were about to hit the thick black armor. The orange fireballs were blocked by the Saturn-type Terminator's thermal repulsion field. The barbarian did not stop his steps. He angrily howled. A thunderclap sounded in the psyker's mind. He dropped his staff, clutched his head with both hands, and groaned in pain. Gibbs came before the psyker, swung his left arm, and the energized blade of his power sword sliced into the enemy. The disintegration field shimmered, tearing the psyker apart. At the same moment, in the first hive city, a tall figure dressed in a yellow robe, his face hidden beneath a hood, only the starlight in his eyes illuminating the surroundings. I have lost 23 disciples. How is that possible? How could the outsiders locate my disciples so quickly? My careful plotting has failed. The yellow-robed figure glided as if bodiless. I must hide and await my chance. He moved through the crowd, heading out of the hive city. The yellow-robed figure strolled leisurely. Wherever he passed, his strange appearance did not attract anyone's attention, as if he did not exist. Chapter 426, The Billion Selection Plan Shattered. On the bridge of the Vostonia's sun, Perkasielny's comm beat occasionally buzzed. To counter the powerful enemy who, according to the Black Emperor, wielded dark utterances, Pell did not enter the battlefield. Instead, he remained on the bridge, ready to teleport to the battlefield at any moment to eliminate the threat. Progress was smoother than Pell had anticipated. Although Order shadows were constantly falling, the assault on the Yellow Robe cult members continued to advance rapidly. These psykers were indeed very powerful, even by librarian standards, but they were too disorganized, each individually leading the forces they had developed. Joint strikes by several squads could quickly achieve targeted eliminations. Just then, Pell's comm bead suddenly buzzed. He answered it, and the guard captain's voice came through. My lord, we've locked onto a powerful target. He's on a Midu device, shining brighter than any other target. But we've tracked the signal twice and launched attacks at his location, yet we haven't seen him. The captain continued, puzzled. He just vanished before our eyes. Each time, at least 10 members of the squad had activated warp sight. But both times, there was no discovery, not even a psychic fluctuation. What he used was neither devil-type teleportation nor a mind-type interference with senses. Open black lens bracket. Could he be using dark utterances? Close black lens bracket. Pell couldn't help but think of the ability the Black Emperor had mentioned. He asked, "Did any of you hear anything?" The communication channel was silent for a moment. A short while later, the voice resumed. My lord, I didn't hear any sound, but there's a royal court monk in the squad. He received a boon from the Father, he is a secret supplicant, and he seemed to hear some sounds. According to him, the sound was unlike any language, completely different from the local Aventinium language. More than a language, it was like some kind of supernatural power. Continue tracking. Send me a teleportation beacon before you catch up to the signal again, Pell commanded. Understood, my lord. The guard captain closed the communication. Lock onto the target's position and continue forward. The engine of the Vostonia-class Rhino armored command vehicle started, its onboard psychic search device being the only high-power unit deployed in Aventinium. The tech sergeant had only just developed a generator alternative for power a week ago, replacing flesh fuel. The armored command vehicle sped along, with 5 Vostonia-class Rhinos following closely on both sides and behind. The armored column pursued the psychic signal, and ahead, the thick city gate of the Hive City appeared. Both sides, clad in brass armor, were fiercely exchanging fire in the gate area. They used the same weapons, unleashing firepower upon each other. The captain stared at the video screen for a moment before giving an order. Auxiliary Army 1st Regiment, follow up and disarm the Noble Council. The 11th Battle Group had discovered in previous encounters that the local Noble Council was not strongly opposed to the arrival of the Order Shadows. After listening to the standard audio broadcast, they were willing to engage with the Legion. The battle group's current strike target was the members of the Yellow Robe cult. Loophole, eliminate the Yellow Robe cult psychers. Many squads of the 11th Battle Group named themselves after place names on Vostronia, their home world of the Legion. This was a proud testament to their guardianship of their home world. Understood, Captain. The Vostonia-class Rhino to the left of the command vehicle detached from the formation, its artillery aimed at the psyker. Accelerate, breach. The captain gave the order. Although he didn't know why the target wanted to leave the Hive City, he had to continue the pursuit. The engine of the Vostonia-class Rhino command vehicle roared, its machine spirit howling as it infused power into the steel war machine. Boom! With a loud crash, the ramming horn roared as it sent the steel gate flying. Outside Hive City 1 was a vast wasteland. It was covered in carbon slag and scorched materials, with broken, crusted debris mixed together. The sky was domed, filled with turbulent clouds of debris. The guard captain, after checking the location marked by the operator of the vehicle-mounted psychic search device on the screen, looked towards the corresponding position on the video screen. Many ruined buildings filled his vision, collapsed towers, shattered spires, and damaged gigantic castles. As the Rhino advanced, countless glass shards splashed up from the crushed black earth. The rapidly moving steel vehicles quickly closed the distance to the ruins and the target. Captain, 500 meters. The operator's voice was urgent. This was their third time catching up to the target. The guard captain suddenly understood and shouted. The target wants to use the ruins to shake us off. Send a teleportation beacon to the flagship. A figure in a long yellow robe sped away. Boltgun fire shot towards his location, then passed through his intangible body. A cold glint flashed in the yellow robe person's eyes, and his whispered voice was already somewhat sluggish. Although all attacks were nullified by dark utterances, he also felt himself reaching his limit. As a member of the Wendao school, he could sustain himself much longer than the apprentices, but even he had a limit. Nearly half of his throat was ruined, and his lungs felt as if they were burning. He knew that even if he reached his established base and underwent timely repairs, his body could not be fully restored. The yellow robe person's powerful psychic ability sensed the apprentices linked to his mind dying one by one. Among them was even one he considered intelligent enough to be a genius of the Wendao school. Open black lens bracket, damn it. Why can they find my apprentices? You've ruined my plan, killed my apprentices, and inflicted unbearable harm upon me. Close black lens bracket. The yellow robe person looked ahead. He could already see his tower. That tower, only 4 meters tall, was inconspicuous among the debris. But only he knew that it was a tower he had created with dark utterances. Once he activated it with dark utterances, the entire nearby Hive City would become a ruin, just as it had during his experiment a millennium ago, turning the entire emerging city into a wasteland. Open black lens bracket, damn it. This isn't my plan. Close black lens bracket. Thinking of this, the yellow robe person's anger intensified. He had originally planned to seize control of Aventinium through this coup, accelerating the construction of the Chaos Guidance Tower. Although dark utterances were the core of building the Chaos Guidance Tower, it also required materials. Controlling Aventinium would allow his plan to be realized more quickly. After using dark utterances to activate the Chaos Guidance Tower, he would gain powerful strength and then hide in the shadows, waiting for the lackeys of the 4 gods to complete the selection for him. He only needed to appear at the appropriate time to summon the final, eugenically selected, apprentices to his command, making them mentors of the Wendao school, and his yellow robe cult would become a branch. The Wendao school had many internal branches since the ancient era of Terra. To become a wielder of authority, he had to have his own cult. Now, The appearance of the black armor warriors had shattered his grand vision, woven over a millennium, to select billions of people and establish the yellow robe cult. Open black lens bracket. You've ruined my selection plan. I'll make you pay with your lives. Close black lens bracket. As the yellow robe person pondered, he softly maintained the dark utterances that enveloped his body. The dark utterances, obeying the will of the Wendao School's excellent graduate, altered the structure of reality. As if the yellow robe person didn't exist, dense boltgun fire passed through his body without the slightest delay. The yellow robe person was only 100 meters from the ruins, and 250 meters from his tower. If he moved another 200 meters forward, he could unleash the dark utterances. Open black lens bracket. Damn it. I'll make you pay with your lives. Close black lens bracket. The yellow robe person cursed in his heart again. This was the only way to make the burning sensation spreading throughout his body feel a little better. Just then, brilliant light flashed. Pell, clad in the Saturn-type Terminator, appeared on the surface of Aventinium via the teleportation transponder. Chapter 427, Bribery Breaks Dark Utterances. Percasielny instantly locked onto the target's position in his relative distance from the target through the guard's divination box system. The swindler's ungloved right hand reached into the Saturn-type Terminator's waist pouch and pulled out a handful of adamantine sand. After being promoted to swindler, Per had specifically modified his armor to better utilize his abilities. The swindler threw the adamantine sand with all his might towards the target's location, saying, "It's for you. You are mine." The enhancement of his throwing ability allowed him to evenly scatter the adamantine sand over the target's position. The yellow robe person felt a sudden presence behind him, but he didn't pay much attention. It was just a dead person. In a moment, he could activate his chaos guiding tower with dark utterances. He felt the thrown sand like metal objects and was even more disdainful. The powerful, missile-like bullets they used were useless against him, so how could these things possibly harm him? As the adamantine sand scattered on the ground, a figure in a yellow robe appeared in Per's eyes. For Per, this not only meant seeing the target but also signified that the swindler had established a connection with the target through bribery, association. The heavy disintegration cannon and the blazing serpent cannon instantly locked onto the yellow robe person's position, and a rain of metallic gifts shot towards the target. The yellow robe person was astonished to find that as the beams penetrated his body, the dark utterance's defense shrouding his body was continuously weakened. He urgently whispered, attempting to reconstruct his defense. Per's attack was relentless. While striding towards the yellow robe person, he maintained continuous strikes on the target, seizing the fleeting opportunity after bribery, weakening his defense. Amidst an explosive roar, the yellow robe, along with his left leg, was decomposed into atoms and vanished into nothingness. The yellow robe person stumbled and fell. He did not possess bioenergy, and the dark utterances he controlled could not repair his body. He felt a fatal threat for the first time, but he was absolutely unwilling to surrender. He suddenly opened his mouth and let out a piercing psychic shriek. As a master psychic, he believed that the psychic scream he emitted could severely damage the enemy's mind. Even if the opponent had a strong will and was not severely wounded, he would gain enough time to unleash a fatal blow that could harvest the enemy's life. Afterward, once he recovered his body with dark utterances, he could crawl to the location where he could activate the Chaos Guiding Tower. Per ascended to the second layer of Telema's mental state, continued his steps, and then pushed his mental state to the third layer. The psychic scream was blocked by the erected wall of will. He drew his power sword from his waist and pressed the runic inscription. Seeing that his psychic scream was ineffective, a look of surprise flashed in the yellow robe person's eyes. He was forced to open his mouth and prematurely unleash the prepared fatal blow. He let out an obscure, unintelligible roar, and an invisible force surged towards the black-armored giant who had rushed before him. Amidst the harsh roar, Per's ocular display flashed a warning of heat-derived field overload. The Saturn-type Terminator's defense was broken by the dark utterances, but the prematurely unleashed fatal blow did not penetrate the thick armor. Per swung his power sword, which glowed with blue light, and struck the yellow-robed person. The yellow-robed person tried to open his mouth again, but his throat was full of a metallic taste, and his vocal cords seemed to have snapped. His labored movements were not as fast as Per's sword swing. The decomposition field flickered, completely tearing the broken body apart. Per looked at the ruins ahead and ordered, the yellow-robed person should be the leader of the yellow-robe cult. There must be a reason for his return here. Organize a team and enter the ruins to search. 15 days later, on Vostonia's sun, Per knelt before the altar, praying devoutly to the Black Emperor. An invisible door opened, black mist surged, engulfing Per and the offerings. After Per came to his senses, he began to report. "My lord, I have already cleared the yellow robe cult forces in Aventinium." Ning Lu listened to Per's brief, not asking him to open his mind to try and acquire dark utterances. Dark utterances were different from silent whispers, they could not be mastered by observing circumstances. To master dark utterances, one had to excavate this secret from the minds of those who possessed it, like John Grammaticus. Although the graduates of the Wendao school all mastered the secrets of dark utterances, they were too cunning. Unless one was lucky enough to encounter them by chance, in situations like Aventinium, by the time Ning Lu received the news and rushed there, the Wendao school people would have already fled. The most realistic and feasible way was to obtain it from her person. "My lord, I found a tower-shaped building in the ruins, which should be the chaos guiding tower you told me about. The librarian is currently studying it to find a safe way to destroy it." As Per spoke, he operated a data pad, displaying an image of the tower-shaped building to the Black Emperor. Ning Lu nodded and asked, "Are there any inscribed texts or graphics on it?" "My lord, I personally inspected it, there are none." Ning Lu was not disappointed. Although the Chaos Guiding Tower had to be created with dark utterances, it was not necessary for dark utterances to be inscribed on it, it only needed to be used during the manufacturing process. As he pondered, Per picked up a crystal box from beside him. Per opened the lid, presenting it before the Black Emperor. Ning Lu's gaze penetrated the colorless mist, seeing the finger-long, shimmering, crystalline worm swimming within. "My lord, I found a laboratory in the ruins. In the laboratory, there were research notes that should belong to the leader of the Yellow Robe cult. He cultivated these worms, called Enlightenment Crystal Worms, to train his apprentices. He would implant the Enlightenment Crystal Worms into the brains of youths. The brains of failures would be devoured, giving birth to larvae, while those who successfully completed the selection would gain powerful psychic abilities." Ning Lu nodded slightly, thinking to himself. Open black lens bracket the main material for the error pathway sequence 7 cryptologist. I didn't expect such an unexpected gain. Close black lens bracket. How many are there? My lord, I found over 100,000 Enlightenment crystal worms in the laboratory, Per replied. From the experimental records, the librarian discovered that on average, each failure produced 4 larvae. Combining the information I received from the nobles, he must have been entrenched in Aventinium for over 500 years to accumulate so many Enlightenment crystal worms. Ning Lu ordered, "I am very interested in them. Collect all of them and sacrifice them to me." "As you command, my lord." After obeying, Per continued his report. Although the Yellow Robe cult has been eradicated, the ideology of eugenics is deeply ingrained in Aventinium's philosophy. An elite education culture is widely promoted among the local nobility, which is superior to the education received by other local people in other worlds. Therefore, I believe that the policy of recruiting new soldiers from the nobility should not change. Ning Lu knew that the Wendao school's education had its merits, so he ordered. "In that case, your warband shall recruit new soldiers from among the nobility." Ning Lu ordered. After sending Per back to Vostonia's sun, he returned to the real world. He ordered Tierney to come to his office in 10 minutes. Subsequently, Ning Lu returned to the first layer of the Nation of Disorder and ordered the Space Monkey to prepare the Cryptologist potion. Tierney, who had already digested the Swindler, drank the mist-shrouded potion and was promoted to Sequence 7. Chapter 428, Azek Ahriman and Hather Mayat compete. The 15th Legion and the 4th Legion took a short break after concluding their battle with the Squat League. Subsequently, both legions were again ordered to undertake a joint operation, heading to Dawn Star to rescue the local populace. In 853, the 28th Expeditionary Fleet arrived at Dawn Star. Azek Ahriman led his retinue to the ruins of Zeluzhany. Although he had not yet complied with the new system established by Genseed Primarch Magnus upon his return to the Legion, which required every captain candidate to be seconded to other legions, as the former de facto leader of the Legion, he still had over 100 retainers. Ahriman was not worried about securing the position of captain. His Gene father had not arranged a seconded legion for him simply because a suitable candidate had not yet appeared. What concerned him now was the vacant think tank curator position. As the Grand Master of the Black Raven School, he could foresee that, due to his Gene father's preference for knowledge and psychic abilities, this position was far more important than in other legions. Even though Lord Ning Lu first facilitated the Emperor's approval for the establishment of the Librarian, Thomas of the Order Shadows was not the second in command of the Legion. The successor to the Reaper, the highly decorated Sanchez, Bukayo Arshaven who discovered Sepra Mundi and many other crucial worlds, and Howard Fend who put into practice his vision of establishing order and rebuilding territories like the Osiris sector, were all clearly more central figures. The same was true for the Legion of another Genseed Primarch who advocated for the use of psychic powers, Sanguinius. Only the 15th Legion was different. The think tank curator was the second in command of the Legion. Ahriman had always believed that the think tank curator position belonged to him. Although Aemon was his father's mentor and deeply trusted by the Primarch, his hidden nature clearly made him unsuitable as a leader of the Legion. According to Ahriman's understanding, most Thousand Sons also believed that he should become the think tank curator. However, this situation recently changed with the sudden rise of Hather Mayat. His performance, especially the space dwarf knowledge he brought back and several precious runes condensed with warp energy, significantly elevated his standing in the Gene Father's eyes. Although his father never explicitly stated it, Ahriman already foresaw that this operation on Dawn Star would be the stage for his confrontation with Hather. The one who performed best among them would become the think tank curator. Ahriman wanted to win this victory. So far, with the exception of Sessek of the 11th Legion, all commanders of legions reunited with their Gene fathers subsequently became the second in command beneath the Genseed Primarch. He did not dwell on Hather's brief lead in being closer to the Primarch during the previous Grand Master Council. But the think tank curator position was different. By obtaining this position, he could use the power it granted to command many thousand sons. To win, Ahriman chose Zeluzhany. Facing the impending magnetic storm, staying here would be a reckless act, even for an Astartes. But Ahriman, to secure victory, was willing to take the risk. He sought to grasp the precious knowledge painstakingly accumulated by generations in the Lost Age. His consciousness drifted with the wind, merging with the pale ashes carried by the gale, sweeping through the collapsed ruins and shattered buildings. The surface of the marble pillars was pitted, and glass gleamed amidst the grand structures. Zeluzhany's rugged mountains stretched along a wide river valley, with unnaturally straight ravines. Ahriman walked through the ruins, his gaze piercing through time. He knew that the last time this city was inhabited was thousands of years ago. Nature had already reclaimed its territory from the ancient Ferrocrete canyons and broken streets. The buildings he walked through were of a style from before the Old Night. Their styles were uniquely varied, lacking the typical modular aesthetic of humanity's super-fast expansion into the stars in later days. Dawn Star had been settled in the early golden age of human exploration, and Zeluzhany was one of the planet's earliest cities. Is this where the first king of Dawn Star established his capital? Ahriman asked, studying the playful dance of particles in his palm, watching them swirl in increasingly complex iterations. Tiny particles of iron oxide glittered with bright, fragmented light. Ancient metal relics in this desolate city had long turned to dust. Now they were awakened, dancing under the impetus of Black Raven techniques. Ahriman sought meaning in the patterns and listened to the echoes of the past. Divining the future had always been his focus. Now, he had to find the hidden past from the depths of the vast ocean, both equally challenging for him. Now, it is time for us to open our minds to each other and communicate. Ahriman ascended to the second mental sphere, releasing his mental barriers and allowing his consciousness to sink into the vast ocean, communicating with the consciousness of this place. Why was your world alone untouched by that madness, surviving the old night? Why did Dawn Star survive, yet your capital fell and was lost? Was it your greed, or your pride? Or perhaps, simply the appointed time? 9 breaths later, Ahriman suddenly ascended to the third sphere, capturing a trace he perceived streaking across the vast ocean. The vast ocean flowed into his body, like water pouring down a series of complex channels, guided and shaped by the thoughts constructed by the third mental sphere. The unknown became known, possibilities never seen, never written, were now revealed. Ahriman's body trembled, ecstatic with his discovery. A captivating image formed in his mind. He glimpsed a dreamlike city standing atop the world, its spurred towers melting as the world burned. Open black lens bracket. Is this what the end of Zaluzhny looked like? Close black lens bracket. Is this the end of Zaluzhny? At the same moment Ahriman employed his Black Raven techniques to unearth the historical mysteries of Dawn Star. His sole competitor, Hathor, also led his third academy and a portion of the Bright Feather School, not yet assigned to an academy, onto the surface of Dawn Star. On the curved surface of the left shoulder pad of everyone in the team, the serpentine, star-shaped emblem of the Thousand Suns Legion was emblazoned in pale ivory white on their crimson power armor. Within the emblems of Hathor and several hundred others, a shining feather was added. That was the symbol of the Bright Feather School that Hathor commanded as Grand Master. The faces of the Thousand Suns with the bright feather painted on each shoulder pad were visibly more handsome than their battle brothers. Not a single bright feather was not a person of beautiful appearance. In this regard, they were similar to the Emperor's children. A portion of them, when they completed their transformation surgeries to become Thousand Suns, most were not so handsome. But they used bright feather techniques, adjusting their flesh with psychic power again and again, to possess marble-like faces, finally earning Hathor's approval. Hathor himself was even more so. Even standing among a group of Emperor's children, he would be exceptionally striking. Rumors within the 15th Legion, including many from the Gene Father, suggested that Hathor should be seconded to the 3rd Legion. He would surely gain the favor of Lord Fulgrim. Although the Thousand Suns felt regret about this, after Hathor gained Lord Ning Lu's attention, and was even gifted precious runes, they were all happy for his secondment to the Order Shadows. Hathor had already guessed his competitor's thoughts from Ahriman's decision to go to the ruins of Zaluzhny. He did not choose the ruins, no ruins' history surpassed Zaluzhny's, and his ability to extract information from them was inferior to Ahriman's. Hathor knew that his only chance was to make good use of the abilities Lord Ning Lu had bestowed upon him. Therefore, he chose Dawn Star's largest city, the stage where he, as a psychiatrist, could best utilize his abilities. Chapter 429, The Cursed Remnants of the Dragon Kingdom. Dawn Star, the planetary capital, Karina. Karina was built at the end of a river valley as straight as an arrow, the source of which was far upstream beyond Zaluzhny. The valley suddenly widened at Karina, forming a large, bowl-shaped structure, enclosed on 3 sides by towering rock walls, with the last side facing the azure ocean. Hathor Mayat walked through it. Karina was more ancient than any architecture he had seen since leaving Terra. Crowded commercial districts, ocean-going transport ships from all over Dawn Star, cathedrals with circular domes, rotating towers inlaid with polarizing glass, and grand libraries. This city was originally home to 70,000 people, but as the electromagnetic storms grew larger, over 500,000 people flooded into the planetary capital, boarding ships from here to leave their homes, which were about to fall into catastrophe. The roads were overwhelmed, cars were bumper to bumper, and tens of thousands of residents trudged along the congested highways. Hathor's gaze searched through the crowd, and he keenly noticed that every civilian around him, as Lord Ning Lu had said, had no psychic potential. They were not the Emperor's silent sisters, they did not evoke a sense of disgust, yet they were rejected by psychic powers. The civilians looked at the tall giants in red armor with curiosity and reverence. Hather quickly locked onto his first target. Unlike the other civilians, this person showed no fear, and he wore a cloak painted with storm patterns. Beneath the cloak was an ochre robe, subtly embroidered with golden patterns. Open black lens bracket Sons of Sidon, close black lens bracket. Hather immediately identified this person as a member of the local religious organization Lord Ning Lu had mentioned. Years before the War Council decided that the 15th Legion and the 4th Legion would be responsible for rescuing Dawn Star, Lord Ning Lu had foreseen it. His words, that this operation would become an important action in his and Azek Ahriman's struggle for the position of librarian, had also come true. Hather had no doubt that the Sons of Sidon were his key to victory. Following the man's gaze, he found 5 others with similar attire and demeanor. Hather raised his staff. He did not intend to use his favored psychic lightning. Lord Ning Lu had said that the Sons of Sidon enjoyed high prestige locally, and acting against them among the fleeing crowd might stir up sensitive public emotions. Just as Hather was preparing to release biomorphic energy to make the target weak and collapse, which on the path of escape would easily be attributed to malnutrition, in his blind spot, a man suddenly tore off his storm robe. The ochre robe revealed a complete pattern of golden snakes embroidered on it. He used his hands and feet to try and climb a statue. The sculpture depicted Damien Turlin, the first bright king of Dawn Star. Hather cursed under his breath. He immediately changed the spell he was casting. As the holy seat of the Bright Feather School, he skillfully completed the spell switch in an instant. Psychic lightning flickered through the crowd, and the son of Shedan and the others, who were about to loudly incite the crowd, were instantly struck down and fell into a coma. Murder! A terrified cry rose from the crowd, and they instinctively began to scatter. The psychiatrist stepped forward heavily, shouting, "Stop!" A terrifying aura emanated from the psychiatrist, and the refugees immediately felt a dragon-like pressure. They wanted to scatter and flee, but the giant's threatening words, and the red-armored warriors who had formed a line, made them stop. After the psychiatrist calmed the public's panic with deterrence, he issued orders to his 1,000 sons. Bring out the unconscious people. The luxurious villa in Carina, its original owner had already departed on a void ship when the Imperial Weather Court released a report that Dawn Star's core was undergoing an unknown decay, and the entire planet's lifespan had sharply reduced to only 6 months before self-destruction. In the dim basement, the son of Shedan slowly woke up. The image in his mind was still stuck on the scene of him climbing the statue, preparing to give a speech. He looked around in confusion, then his pupils suddenly constricted. He saw the giants in red armor, the outsiders. Hather smiled, and with the perfect vocal cords shaped by his biomorphic energy, he spoke with a magnetic voice. Son of Shedan, let's talk. The words of the red giant, and the scent of peace he perceived, eased the son of Shedan's taut nerves. What do you want to talk about? Let's start with why you are Sons of Sidon. The psychiatrist saw that the other party was affected by his psychological suggestion, and carefully blended essential oils, and his spirit was no longer tense. He began to guide him patiently, starting with simple topics. The Sons of Sidon were not a secret organization, they existed openly on Dawn Star, and the other party would not be particularly resistant. Starting with this topic would allow him to further lead the conversation into his own rhythm. The son of Shedan's mouth curved upwards, and he said proudly, "We are the chosen ones, who can ascend to join the Lord of Storms. His storms shake many worlds, his coming shatters the earth. Our world missed an opportunity once, when an age of strife without light descended upon this galaxy, elevating the chosen into his golden palace among the stars. Now, the merciful Lord of Storms, he bestows his grace upon us once more. He presents us with this opportunity to be with him. In the celebrations of the old night, we were deprived of this opportunity, now the Sons of Sidon have another chance. The heavens reveal the signs of his coming. Welcome them, embrace this golden apocalypse." A hint of disdain flashed in Hather's eyes. Open black lens bracket as my lord said, the Sons of Sidon are a death-worshipping cult that adores the apocalypse, close black lens bracket. Hather operated his data slate, bringing up a holographic map. Where is the colony ship named Shedan? Hather learned from Lord Ning Lu that Shedan departed from the Dragon Kingdom during humanity's golden age of exploration. Hather was no stranger to the Dragon Kingdom. The Thousand Sons had set foot on that land and found a large number of giant missiles containing nuclear warheads in a warehouse in the Bashu region. The Dragon Empire's colony ship, unfortunately, experienced a surge in psychic powers during the Old Night. The terrified crew isolated the psychics and used machines to drain their psychic energy. The resentment of the dead psychics coalesced into one entity, forming a powerful presence in the warp, Shedan. The crew fled the Shedan in terror, but their minds had been brainwashed. Shedan's curse was passed down through generations, and the entire planet's colonists were affected descendants. Every awakened person would become a son of Shedan. How to activate the colony ship? Where are the machines of destruction you created? The psychiatrist asked a series of questions, obtaining the desired answers from the son of Shedan. The psychiatrist then questioned the other sons of Sidon one by one, recording the information he wanted. Open black lens bracket. Now I must execute my lord's command. My lord predicted that once Magnus and Perturabo discovered that the Dawn Star people were cursed by Shedan, they would kill all colonists and issue an extermination order for this planet. Before parting, my lord told me, if possible, save the remnants of the Dragon Kingdom on Dawn Star. My lord's meaning is still primarily for me to defeat Ahriman and win, but completing the secondary task would also please him. Close black lens bracket. Hather frowned. Lord Ning Lu had said that Shedan was a powerful warp entity that even the Gene Father could not defeat alone, and he himself had no chance of suppressing him and exerting his abilities. I hope my information can draw the attention of the Gene Father and Lord Perturabo, only then will it be possible to complete this task. Regardless, unearthing the secrets of the colony ship and Shedan in advance will definitely give me an advantage in the competition with Ahriman. Chapter 432, Gene Father not yet arrived, Psychiatrist, saves himself. Dawn Star, Planetary Capital Carena, Orbital Command Center. Magnus was trying his best to persuade Perturabo. Even though time was pressing, he spoke with the patience of a teacher. During this conversation, his eyes were aquamarine, similar to his brother's. Geomagnetic polarity reversal is a common phenomenon on all planets, with intervals between each reversal lasting approximately 500,000 years. The reversal itself usually takes several centuries to complete, making it almost imperceptible to the planet's inhabitants. However, Dawn Star's magnetic field reversal has accelerated to 6 months, and the tech priests of Mars have delved deep into the planet's core but found no reason. A conspiracy lurks behind this. A light flickered in Perturabo's ice-blue eyes, then extinguished. He watched the tugboats climbing towards orbit through his armor's glass. My mission is evacuation, not to seek the reason for a planet destined to perish. My plan will ensure every citizen of Dawn Star safely leaves this planet. To ensure the plan's completion, every aircraft, no matter how dilapidated, must be put into use. Magnus, now I must continue my work. After Perturabo finished speaking, he walked to the control panel, his dreadlocks about to connect to the system to continue his work. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently, and the entire orbital command center shook. Perturabo's electronic dreadlocks connected to the information flow, rapidly compiling data from various nodes. Earthquakes, vast cracks appearing in the land. Tsunamis, cities swallowed. Even the Planetary Defense Force, Red Dragon, which had previously been compliant and had performed his assigned tasks quite well, launched a rebellion. Their armored firepower suddenly opened fire on the Iron Warriors, causing several deaths. They also kidnapped the Imperial-appointed planetary governor, Conrad Varga, completely disrupting his evacuation plan. A flicker of irritation crossed Perturabo's ice-blue eyes, and his dreadlocks detached from the electronic instrument. You foresaw this, with your psychic power. Magnus keenly sensed the repulsion in Perturabo's tone towards psychic power. Through long-term contact, he had a considerable understanding of Perturabo. Unlike Leman Russ's pure disgust, Perturabo and Rogel Dorn's attitudes towards psychic power were somewhat similar. They both emphasized the dangers of using psychic power. Dorn's ideas came more from himself, while Perturabo's were due to the Emperor's emphasis. Magnus smiled, shaking his head slightly. It stems more from my son, Hather Mayat. He captured the sons of Sidon and obtained intelligence from them. Based on this information, the future I've perceived tells me that Dawn Star's doomsday is a meticulously planned conspiracy. Now, the device you were to build for me, it's ready. Perturabo was silent for a moment. Magnus had previously given him decrypted ancient documents, asking him to build a warp navigator device. The most unique aspect of that device was that it didn't require psychic power to use, which could compensate for the lack of navigators in the evacuation fleet. It had long been completed. Perturabo originally wanted to smash it in front of Magnus to remind his only friend, his brother, of the dangers of the warp that the Emperor had taught. But now was not the right time. Magnus was a proud brother, he had complete confidence in himself. To persuade him, it should never be when his own plan failed, but when that machine proved useful. Follow me. Perturabo stepped towards the covered instrument, pulling back the gray curtain. 10 minutes later, the red Stormbird took off. Magnus busied himself nervously between two machines linked by adamantium chains. He no longer had time to modify his own machine, now he had to combine the two machines. The machine Perturabo built would lock onto the warp entity named Sidon, and the machine he built would help him gather energy to eliminate this threat. As the Stormbird rapidly flew towards Zaluzhany, Hather Mayat was already in despair. He raised his staff, and the power of the bright feather school's 1,000 suns converged into an electric ball. The dazzling light of the electric dragon was as brilliant as the thunder raised by the electromagnetic storm in the distance. Psychic lightning struck the body encased in red armor, but he merely raised a hand, and a shimmering light met the electric current. Amidst the crackling, the psychic lightning was swallowed. Die! Asawa let out a roar, and a torrent of flames descended from the sky. Phocis Taka raised both hands, telekinesis gushing forth, and a force field shield obscured the sky. The molten stream crashed onto the force field shield, and Taka's expression changed drastically. As a prominent member of the Falcon School, who had entered the First Council, only a defense created by a gene seed Primarch was stronger than his among the 1,000 suns. But the force field shield he created was shattered in an instant. Taka let out a roar, his telekinesis unwillingly pressed back around his body, barely encasing him. Flames consumed dozens of 1,000 suns, burning them to ashes in moments. Countless images flickered in Asawa's eyes, and he let out a sneer. 1,000 suns, all are dust. Hather was at the center of the flames. His body melted by the fire, then rapidly regenerated under the action of biochemical energy. As his psychic power rapidly depleted, he heard Sidon's words. In the real world, Asawa's voice came from one person. But in the vast ocean, there were countless chaotic voices. The voices seemed to come from thousands of people, men and women, old and young. Hather was puzzled by the content of Sidon's words. With the Gene Father's return to the Legion, how could the mighty 1,000 suns be associated with dust? He immediately cast aside Sidon's words. Now, the more crucial thing was how to survive. Hather glanced at the sky out of the corner of his eye, seeing no shadow whatsoever. The Gene Father had not appeared, he could only seek to save himself. As he withdrew his gaze, he saw the dense barrage of bullets the 1,000 suns fired at Sidon rapidly dissolve in the air, the bolter rounds scattering like dust. Since psychic power could not contend with the powerful warp entity spawned by the painful deaths of countless psychics, he could only rely on the abilities granted by Lord Ning Lu to save himself. A flash of inspiration struck the psychiatrist's mind, and his thoughts raced. Open black lens bracket. The awakened psychics of the dead Dragon Kingdom were killed after their psychic energy was extracted by their compatriots. Sidon was spawned by the resentment of countless dead. Those dead lives still exist. Although Sidon is powerful, I might be able to pacify a part of him. close black lens bracket. After conducting a psychological analysis, the psychiatrist spoke. My compatriots of Terra, psychics, I understand you. You never did anything wrong, yet you were ruthlessly betrayed by your own kind. The psychiatrist found that as he pacified them, the torrent of flames engulfing him dissipated. Open black lens bracket. It works. A part of Siden's aggregate has been pacified by me. I can communicate with him. Perhaps I have a chance to fulfill Lord Ning Lu's command. Close black lens bracket. Thinking this, Hather shouted, "Stop! Retreat!" He was already too weak to send out thought pulses, and his armor's communication device had been incinerated in the molten stream. The magnificent armor meticulously crafted by the Bright Feather School's Temple Prime, and even his perfectly long hair, could not be reshaped with Bright Feather techniques. Hather was in an unprecedented state of disarray, but the psychiatrist had no time to spare. He saw Sidon lower his right hand, raise his left hand, and aim at the retreating Thousand Suns. We are not your enemies. I am your friend. Tell me your story. Asawa's face twisted, and arguing voices resounded in the vast ocean. Lies. Kill them. No. I must tell him that story. Tell him that vile scoundrel. He deceived me. He tricked me into it. His name is, damn it, I can't remember his name. Yes, someone must know of the shameful betrayal. He and they cannot die before I finish my story. Taka looked at Hather, and as their gazes met, he felt his firm conviction. He nodded slowly, leading the Thousand Sons of the second and third chapters away, leaving Hather alone with the terrifying Asawa. Time passed minute by minute. The psychiatrist listened to hundreds of thousands of voices resounding in his mind. He rapidly responded to each voice, carefully pacifying their emotions. Hather believed that if it were an ordinary psychiatrist, they would have been torn to shreds long ago. Fortunately, he was both an Astartes and a psychic, possessing a superhuman brain. Lord Ning Lu's 3 grants of power had also enhanced his mind and given him the ability to handle such situations. The psychiatrist nervously satisfied some, pacified others, maintaining a fragile balance until all the Thousand Suns disappeared from his perception. He had just let out a sigh of relief when he suddenly heard the roar of an engine. Hather looked up and saw the Legion-painted red Stormbird rapidly approaching. The Gene Father is here. As this thought flashed through his mind, a terrifying scream erupted. Sidon sensed a life form that could threaten him. Chapter 433, Colony Ship Crash. Shedan raised his right hand and grabbed at the air. The Stormbird was crushed into powder like a toy. Hather Mayat looked up and saw metal wreckage falling from the sky. Within the metal wreckage, he saw a gray sphere, sparkling with starlight within. Hather observed every curve and line, every detail crafted by the master artisan. Also included in his view were numerous iconic features, demonstrating the creator's profound understanding and mastery of machinery. Open black lens bracket that was manufactured by Lord Perturabo. My father once asked him to create a warp navigation device based on ancient records. Close black lens bracket. Hather's gaze was then drawn to a cubic device, on which dazzling runes flickered. He recognized the runes as originating from the Grimner Sage's warp circuitry, capable of gathering immense warp energy. Those runes were bestowed upon him by the Black Emperor, and he, in turn, gave them to the Gene Father. Hather saw the red giant use telekinesis to lift the device, which was connected by adamantium chains and runes. Shedan raised his hand, and a torrent of flames swept across the sky. In Hather's vision, the sky was dyed blood red, engulfing Magnus and the robot. Immediately, in his ethereal vision, colorful lights shimmered, and a psychic storm collided with the flames, producing continuous explosions. The energy collision obliterated the cloud of shimmering lightning. Amidst the continuous explosions, large swaths of flames melted away like ice and snow. Magnus landed steadily, carrying the robot. His eyes, at this moment, gleamed with the same silver as Ferrus Manus, fixed on the red-armored warrior. The person encased in red armor had a face similar to Asawa, but the power surging within his body shone like stars in the vast ocean. Open black lens bracket. Hather's intelligence was indeed correct. Close black lens bracket. As Magnus pondered, he rapidly tapped on the modified robot. The runes lit up one by one, and a stream of ethereal energy, shining with blue light, shot out from the sphere. The blue energy stream flew towards Shedan like an arrow. Warp energy surged frantically into Shedan's body, and his speed suddenly increased dramatically. Magnus saw the red figure move rapidly, even faster than him. Open black lens bracket. Only Ning Lu and Sanguinius, who have wings, can keep up with such speed. But I have Hather's intelligence and was prepared. Close black lens bracket. A gray light shot out from the cube, merging into the blue energy stream. The two lights intertwined and struck Shedan, who was flying rapidly. Shedan was flung away, crashing heavily into the colony ship. The blue energy beam tore through the colony ship's metal hull, blasting a crack several meters wide. Father, Hather quickly walked over, sending a thought pulse. The device you crafted has severely wounded that warp entity. Now is not the time to rejoice. He is not dead, merely escaped into the void ship, Magnus replied telepathically. I believe Father will surely defeat it. Hather thought of Lord Ning Lu's command and pleaded with the Gene Father. Before your arrival, I communicated with him. I found many voices within his body, which should belong to those psychics who were persecuted to death. Dispelling some of that resentment, I believe, is the best way to resolve the Shedan threat. Magnus's silver eyes shimmered with brilliance as he looked at Hather with approval. He had made a similar discovery during his recent clash with Shedan. What surprised the Gene Seed Primarch even more was that Shedan possessed power similar to his own. Asawa's will was overwhelmed and controlled. Hather not only resisted Shedan's psychic manipulation but also successfully stalled for time. I will bind him into the device I brought, but it was not designed for sealing. My runes cannot bind him for long, you only have a very short time. I will be ready. The two communicated rapidly telepathically, and Magnus suddenly frowned. The ground trembled violently. This time, it was not caused by magnetic forces, but came from the colony ship. Amidst the roaring vibrations of the engines, the colossal steel ship, dormant for thousands of years, rose into the air. Air currents buffeted Hather, biomorphic energy surged within his half-naked body, and he stood steadily in the airflow. He saw many cannons on the ship turn, pointing downwards. Although it was a colony ship, its firepower was mismatched with its massive metal body, but its various ship-mounted cannons were still lethal. Magnus's expression was grim, his consciousness spread outwards, bypassing the electromagnetic storm area, and issuing commands to the Thousand Suns. Gather at my location. Then, his consciousness condensed and pierced into the colony ship. The Gene Seed Primarch pushed his mental state to the 10th level, a unique mental state belonging only to him, a realm no one among the Thousand Suns had reached. His consciousness instantly swept through this ancient warship, ancient construction techniques and accumulated history poured into his thoughts. Normally, Magnus would leisurely admire such artistic masterpieces, but now he had to hurry. In an instant, Magnus's consciousness passed through the entire ship, reaching the bridge. Not a single control panel had crew operating it, yet binary streams flickered, levers swung up and down, and dials on the instruments rotated. It was as if thousands of souls were operating it. Magnus's consciousness swept over the golden armored figure suspended in the air. Indeed, thousands of souls were controlling it. Shedan's eyes sparked with electrical light, looking at the light body formed by Magnus's consciousness. A supernatural collision erupted in the vast ocean. All Thousand Suns felt a towering tsunami surging, its terrifying waves even exceeding the magnetic storm. After Fosse's Taka led the injured Thousand Suns of the 2nd and 3rd schools to retreat for treatment, Azek Ahriman was closest to the Gene Seed Primarch's position in the Zeluzhany ruins. He felt the collision in the vast ocean, and could not help but be secretly alarmed. Open black lens bracket. There is an existence that can contend with Father. He was even in Zeluzhany, and I didn't even notice him. Close black lens bracket. Quick, he said telepathically, and the Sky Eagle School's followers conveyed his command to everyone. Asta was the only former school leader of Prospero who sided with Ahriman. he hoped Ahriman could defeat Hather, so he could reclaim his position as the Bright Feather School's temple head. Asta raised his hands, and biomorphic energy infused the team. Everyone felt their bodies filled with energy, their speed became even swifter, and they rushed towards the Gene Father at a pace exceeding a forced march. The red steel torrent swiftly swept through the Zeluzhany ruins, mercilessly shattering the bluestones they cherished as treasures. Moments later, in Ahriman's vision, his father's tall figure came into view. At the same time, a series of images flashed rapidly through his mind. "No!" Ahriman shouted loudly, "Father, the colony ship is falling, be careful." Magnus did not turn back, he looked up at the sky. His psychic confrontation with Shedan had not only destroyed the colony ship's weapons systems but also its control panels and power systems. The colossal object in the sky stopped ascending, and just as Ahriman had foreseen, it was about to fall. "My sons, gather your strength upon me." Chapter 434 Magnus withstands the falling colony ship. Azek Ahriman, along with hundreds of thousand sons, immediately obeyed his Gene Father's command and raised their hands towards the Gene Seed Primarch. The shimmering light of psychic energy outshone the roar of the electromagnetic storm. Magnus raised his left arm, and psychic energy converged in his uplifted palm. The Gene Seed Primarch's body swelled as he painstakingly controlled the destructive power, bringing it under his command. He felt that this immense power could rival the powerful force field shield created by the Falcon School in Tiska, which could withstand orbital bombardment. But for him, it was not enough. The falling colony ship contained not only the impact force of the colony ship under gravity but also the powerful force exerted by a creature named Shedan. Magnus raised his right arm, and a multicolored psychic light shot out from his palm, flying into the device he had crafted. Engraved on the device were all the runes related to warp power that he had mastered. 999 runes were all activated by his activation. Among them, the 9 most core runes, 5 came from the natural patterns formed by the fallen bird-shaped statue on Prospero, and the other 4 were obtained by Hather Mayat from Ning Lu. The light descending from the sky tore through the dust clouds and struck the cube. The Gene Seed Primarch maintained the 10th level of his mental state, allowing his mind to completely transcend his physical body, using the power of his mind to control the immense warp power drawn by hundreds of his sons and the device. Magnus pushed both hands upwards, and the immense power collided with the falling colony ship. The rolling sound of thunder spread throughout Dawnstar. Hather did not inject psychic energy into his Gene Father, his power had already been almost exhausted previously. His gaze shifted from the colossal object, which was slowing down and getting closer. The power his father had condensed had already blocked the descending ship. Hather looked at Ahriman and the others who had arrived, seeing them connected to their Gene Father through psychic energy. 4 breaths later, his pupils suddenly contracted. 1,000 Sun's body, along with the red power armor on him, disintegrated at a visible speed, turning into dust and scattering on the ground. Hather did not need to spread biokinetic psychic energy to understand the reason. The 1,000 Suns connected to their Gene Father's psychic energy endured powerful impacts to both their minds and bodies. The Gene Seed Primarch could withstand and bear most of the pressure, but the 1,000 Suns could not endure the immense power. Hather watched as 1,000 Sun after another turned into dust, and he could not help but recall Shedan's words. 1,000 Suns, all are dust. He seemed to see an unfortunate pall looming over the future threads of fate for the 1,000 Suns. Hather collected his thoughts, the gloom on his marble-like face, along with the swirling dust, making his handsome face even more obscure. Boom! The tremendous crash of the colony ship hitting the ground brought Hather's attention back to the present. Under the effect of telekinesis, the colony ship's landing was relatively stable, but the weight of its massive body was still destructive to the fragmented ground. Amidst the violent shaking, Hather felt his feet sink, and a shockwave carrying rocks and dust surged towards him. He injected bioenergy into his body, steadying himself amidst a series of collisions and shockwaves. Hather saw that in front, Magnus's robe, his shoulders, and the power armor on his back had all turned to dust in an instant, sliding off his body. He widened his eyes, searching in the direction of the toppled colony ship, and indeed saw that Shedan was not dead. His red power armor was shattered, and blood continuously overflowed from his mouth and nose. Shedan's body swayed, and he let out a sneer, saying sarcastically, "Scarlet King, everything you cherish will turn to dust." Tens of thousands of voices echoed in the minds of Magnus, Hathor, and the dozen or so surviving thousand sons, including Ahriman. Magnus's uplifted arms paused, then suddenly lifted. The warp device once again flashed with dazzling light, piercing through the dust and clouds. A pillar of light descended from the sky, striking Shedan. The pillar of light decomposed into golden chains, coiling around Shedan. Magnus let out a roar, and Shedan was pulled up. Shedan let out a roar, his whole body swelling, trying desperately to break free from the psychic power's restraint. A storm surged within Shedan's body, but no matter how he struggled, he could not break free from the shackles placed upon him. He fearfully wanted to leave Asawa's body and return to the vast ocean. The book at Magnus's waist suddenly flew up out of nowhere, suspended in the air. As he chanted, the pages turned rapidly. Hathor looked up at the book of Magnus, his eyes shining, and he secretly thought to himself, "Open black lens bracket if I offer the book of Magnus, which contains the most precious knowledge and immense power, to my lord, I will surely please my lord, close black lens bracket." As Hathor pondered, a golden beam of light struck the golden device. Asawa's body plummeted rapidly, heavily striking the cube. With a bang, the upward-facing side of the cube was shattered by the red power armor. Asawa's body rolled inside. The metal sphere then flew up, striking the broken cube, filling the broken side, and then filling the inside. Magnus took a deep breath, expelling Shedan's words from his mind. "Hathor, in this operation, your intelligence and your performance have satisfied me. Without prior preparation, dealing with Shedan's threat would have resulted in heavy casualties." Hathor smiled upon hearing this. In the competition for think tank curator, he had won the final victory. Open black lens bracket father should officially announce it at the next Primarch meeting after the Dawn Star operation concludes, close black lens bracket. As Hathor pondered, he saw his father walk to the device. He drew his scimitar and rapidly tapped, carving out runes one by one. "He is entrusted to you, but he is too powerful. The runes of painted can only bind him for about 10 standard days." Hathor nodded. To complete Lord Ning Lu's command, he would go all out. The psychiatrist walked towards the device, soothingly, speaking to Shedan, who was trembling at his shoulders and arms, struggling desperately. "We haven't finished our conversation before, now let's continue." 11 standard days later, when the Thousand Suns excavated the partially damaged colony ship, the Shedan. Magnus walked out of the colony ship and towards the warp device, praising Hathor, who was wearing brand new power armor. "Your conversation has been effective, your talent in mental aspects is no less than Apophis. At least 1,000 psychics have found peace." As Magnus spoke, the psychiatrist felt as if stars were shattering within his body. Hathor secretly thought, "I have mastered the power bestowed by my lord and become a true psychiatrist." As he pondered, there was a sudden explosion, and the device in front of him shattered and disintegrated. The book at Magnus's waist flew up, its pages turning rapidly. "All are dust," Shedan said venomously, his body being sucked into the pages of the book. Hathor looked at the book of Magnus, which had fallen into his Gene father's hands, his eyes flashing with dazzling light. Chapter 435 Huang Laohan chooses Ning Lu to accompany him. The last Terra month of 853. Terra, Golden Palace. Ning Lu's psychic projection came across the void, and he swept his gaze, noticing that the seating arrangement among the Primarchs had changed somewhat. Robert Gilliman, who had completed the first phase of the expedition and opened the navigation route to Terra, ascended to the third position, sitting to the right of Horus Lupercal. To his right were Rogel Dorn, Lehman Russ, Sanguinius, Vulcan, and Magnus, in order. The First Legion had rapidly grown stronger after Lionel Johnson's return, only Ferrus Manus sat between him and Ning Lu. To Lion's left were Hannibal, Perturabo, and Fulgrim, in order. Fulgrim saw Ning Lu and a perfect smile appeared on his face. Ning Lu, thank you for your gift. It's simply a work of art, as beautiful as the double-headed eagle on the chest of my Legion's power armor. The Skyhawk shuttle has indeed shaped a completely new image for us, giving us a more suitable aircraft for many situations. A similarly perfect smile appeared on Sanguinius' face. The Stormbird is too rigid. Horus looked at his good friend. The Skyhawk shuttle allows us to show another side, making diplomatic affairs proceed more smoothly. Mikado smiled, gently stroking the golden Skyhawk on the head of his staff. Not only the legions, but the Ministry of Internal Affairs has also benefited from it, making diplomatic affairs proceed more smoothly. After Ning Lu accepted everyone's thanks, his gaze fell on Perturabo, who had not spoken. I also want to thank Perturabo. He made the Skyhawk shuttle even more perfect. Perturabo's ice blue eyes glowed, and he said casually. It was just a casual effort, perfecting it was not difficult for me. Perturabo, were your and Magnus's evacuation efforts on Dawnstar smooth? We successfully evacuated 1.03 million people and resettled them in neighboring Imperial worlds, Perturabo said calmly. Perturabo didn't want to say more. Although in the end, except for the civilians who died in the disaster caused by the electromagnetic storm, everyone else executed his plan perfectly, but after he learned the truth about Shedan from the captured sons of Sidon, the rescued planetary governor Conrad Varga, and the planetary defense force Red Dragon, it was clear that he was not the true decision maker. If the truth had not been discovered and his evacuation plan had been carried out, the faith of Shedan would have spread to other worlds. The worst outcome could even lead to many worlds being destroyed by the rising death worship cult. Perturabo decided to consider the warp and the life within it more as factors when formulating more perfect plans in the future. Magnus knew Perturabo didn't want to say more, so he added, there was a religion on Dawnstar called the Sons of Sidon. After listening to Magnus and Perturabo's accounts, Ning Lu knew from memory that they had hidden a lot of information. Apparently, considering that Imperial truth does not acknowledge the existence of life in the warp, Magnus did not mention the warp entity Shedan. Nor did he mention that after possessing Asawa, he first uttered the phrase, all or dust, which foretold the fate of the Thousand Suns. Although Magnus had some concealment, Ning Lu still combined it with his memory to capture some information. Open black lens bracket Magnus's famous scene, resisting the falling colony ship. Magnus mentioned that only 540,000 suns died in the entire operation, which is much less than in my memory. Was it because I had Hather Mayat provide intelligence, allowing Magnus to prepare in advance, close black lens bracket. In Ning Lu's memory, Magnus was almost always at a disadvantage when confronting Shedan directly. He and many thousand suns would brace against the falling colony ship. Most of the thousand suns linked to him by psychic power turned to dust. Finally, Magnus won by sealing Shedan inside the Book of Magnus. Open black lens bracket well, the detailed process can only be learned from Hather Mayat when I see him next time. Hather successfully completed the mission. Originally, he would also have been controlled by Shedan and finally rescued by Magnus. Now, with my cultivation, his ability is much stronger than before. Not only did he allow over 1 million survivors of the Dragon Kingdom, where no one originally survived, to survive, but he also successfully became a think tank curator. Close black lens bracket. After Ning Lu talked with Magnus about the Dawnstar battle, the Emperor and Constantine Valder appeared at the meeting. After everyone saluted, the Emperor surveyed the crowd and casually asked Magnus and Perturabo about the Dawnstar evacuation operation. Magnus gave a more detailed report but still did not mention the existence of the warp entity Shedan. After the briefing, Mikado spoke. The Ministry of Internal Affairs clerks recorded and publicized the Dawnstar evacuation operation, and many worlds rejoiced at the Empire's performance in the disaster. The approval ratings of many worlds in the Empire have increased to varying degrees, and work efficiency has improved. Members of the Council. From beneath the Mars Forge director's mask, a synthesized voice sounded, drawing the attention of others to him. During the war with the Squat, the Mark II power armor showed many drawbacks. To fight in the narrow corridors of spacecraft and boarding actions, enclosed mines, underground tunnel systems, and other environments, and to fight with little cover, we have developed specialized power armor to adapt. Compared to the expeditionary type, the new model, named Iron, provides more frontal protection, and correspondingly, the weight of the rear power armor is reduced, so it is not suitable for conventional combat. As the Mars Forge director spoke, mechanical appendages tapped his chest, and new images were projected. It adopts a new design called Iron Pattern. The slanted plates of this heavy helmet are designed to allow for angled firing to the left and right. Ning Lu nodded slightly. He knew that the Mark III helmet pattern inspired the future Mark IV helmet design, and the wedge-shaped helmet was the basis for the Mark VI, a unique beaked helmet. The holographic image disappeared, and the Mars Forge director continued. The Mechanicus will provide new power armor for each legion to cope with future frontal combat. The Emperor nodded with satisfaction. This is another good piece of news I've heard today. He surveyed the council members and continued. I have another piece of good news. He said slowly, I have received intelligence that in the southern part of the galaxy, on the savage world of Barbaris, there is a Beander. He is leading the local populace to attack the alien overlord who enslaves humanity. Upon hearing this, Ning Lu knew that Huang Laohan was referring to Mortarion. I want to choose one of you to accompany me to Barbaris to retrieve your brother. The Emperor's gaze swept over everyone, finally resting on Ning Lu. Ning Lu, through the Guardianal door, you can quickly reach Barbaris. You will come with me. Ning Lu had no interest in accompanying the Emperor to welcome Mortarion, a staunch opponent of psychic powers. But then he thought that perhaps the alien, the Overlord, was a potion ingredient. Ning Lu also thought that he did not plan to launch a new campaign in the short term. The next divination dice would cool down in 855, and only then would he divine Guardianal. Thinking of this, he spoke and accepted the command. As you wish. Chapter 438, Trading with Mortarion, Unexpected Gains. The Overlord was driven back into the mountains, with fewer sacrifices than Mortarion had anticipated. But Mortarion did not relax. He gripped his weapon and walked towards the opponent. I am Mortarion, and I thank you for your help. He probed, are you also human? My name is Ning Lu. The Gene Seed Primarch had already keenly sensed that the surrounding toxic gas was not dense before. He knew that the threat of toxic gas varied in different regions of this savage world. In the valleys and low-lying plains where humans lived, they could survive most of the time, even before Mortarion helped them create filters. Just like humans in hive city worlds and industrial worlds develop adaptive evolution after generations of living, ordinary humans from other worlds coming to this environment without protection would mostly die within a short period. The truly dangerous areas were the mountainous regions where the alien overlords lived, and the closer to the peak, the denser the toxic mist became. At the highest peaks, even the Gene Seed Primarch Mortarion, who grew up in this environment, would be affected even with a filter. His inability to defeat Nikare in the end was partly due to being weakened by the toxic gas. Ning Lu manipulated the living metal to recede, revealing a face like a stone sculpture. The inhaled toxic gas made his nose and mouth feel sour for an instant, then quickly returned to normal. The Barbaris people, seeing that he was unaffected, as if he was born on Barbaris, were full of surprise in their eyes. Ning Lu noticed that the wariness in Mortarion's eyes receded, but was replaced by worry. Open black lens bracket Mortarion's reaction is exactly as I expected. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu thought to himself. Open black lens bracket Mortarion sees himself as the savior of the Barbaris people, and considers killing every overlord his mission. He will not welcome the appearance of a new strong person, because I will threaten his completion of the mission. Close black lens bracket. I am an outsider, and I hope to trade with you. Mortarion breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, and asked in confusion. Trade. What do you want? The weapons used by the outsider, and the flying metal vehicles, were all things beyond Mortarion's imagination. The Barbaris people only had crude weapons and farm tools. He didn't know what could possibly interest the other party. I need the flora and fauna of Barbaris, Ning Lu said. The creatures of Barbaris live in a toxic environment. Most of them are highly poisonous, and the others also have strong antitoxic abilities. These toxic substances are useful for apothecary, biologist, and even demoness of afflictions, and perhaps there are also materials for magical potions. I also want the heads of the overlords. I am very interested in them. I will provide you with food, excellent weapons, and more durable armor. I can also provide you with better filtration devices, and even make targeted improvements based on the toxic gas conditions in the mountains. Of course, you'll have to collect the toxic gas from the mountains yourselves, Ning Lu said with a smile. Open black lens bracket Mortarion will not refuse such a trade. With food, Mortarion will be able to gather more followers and feed them. With the equipment I provide to the Barbaris people, he can clear out the overlords faster. What I give are ordinary people's equipment, and I get magical potion materials and local flora and fauna. The trade is not a loss. The enemies are all killed by Mortarion. He will fulfill his mission as he wishes. I can both complete Huang Laohan's task and avoid being a scapegoat or becoming his object of hatred. Close black lens bracket. While Ning Lu was pondering, Mortarion fell into silent thought. After arranging other matters, Typhon, who had walked over, heard the trade proposed by the outsider. His eyes gleamed, and he quickened his steps, walking to Mortarion's side. His terms are quite good. I agree to your trade. Typhon will represent us in negotiating the details of the trade, Mortarion said. He had no reason to refuse the outsider's trade. Ning Lu immediately gave orders for Arsenadun to dispatch a transport ship. 2 standard hours later, the Barbaris people looked up at the black behemoth slowly descending from the sky. Servitors wearing respirators unloaded the crates. The first brave Barbaris person drank the nutritional porridge, achieving the accomplishment of being full for the first time in his life. Ning Lu's generous prepayment of food made the hesitant Barbaris people cheer and accept the trade. Mortarion took the food and went to the surrounding human settlements. In just a few days, the size of his human resistance army expanded several times. After being liberated from the barren land, Mortarion, who could feed more people, recruited followers rapidly without restraint. Malina Scala arrived at Barbaris, excitedly taking over boxes of toxic substances sent by the Barbaris people. On the 14th day of Ning Lu's arrival at Barbaris, Malina, by his side, excitedly reported to him in Vostonian, her red lips slightly parted. As of now, we have obtained 140 types of flora and fauna in the trade, totaling over 7,200. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Adding the 47 overlord heads he had already moved to the Nation of Disorder, his trip to Barbaris was not in vain. His gaze turned to the distance, where Typhon, leading over 100 Barbaris people wearing gas masks and grey armor, walked into the camp amidst cheers. The gas masks were stock for Legion retainers and crew, temporarily requisitioned and traded to the Barbaris people. The grey armor was forged by the worthy Shadow's forge deck specifically against the reanimated corpses driven by the overlords. The poisonous hands and vicious teeth of the reanimated corpses would not poison them. Ning Lu's gaze passed over them and landed on the metal cart. He saw the blood-red vine plant inside, its stems and branches covered with hook-shaped thorns. On some of the thorns, there was grey armor hanging, and some had bloody flesh hanging from them. Open black lens bracket the main material for sequence 6 inches rose bishop, the flesh rose. Indeed, an unexpected gain. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's gaze swept over the Barbaris people again, and he noticed that the armor on the arms and other parts of a dozen or so of them was damaged, as if torn by something. Several others were carried on the shoulders of other Barbaris people. Their grayish-white skin was red, as if glowing red. They were unconscious, their bodies occasionally trembling slightly. Malina, detoxify them. Malina immediately walked over. Ning Lu forbade her from using psychic abilities on Barbaris, but even without biopsychic abilities, detoxification was not difficult for a biologist. Ning Lu walked towards Typhon and said, I am very interested in these plants. I am willing to pay 100 sickles forged from fine steel. Typhon's somber face immediately brightened with joy. Ning Lu, thank you for your generosity. I need more, as many as possible, Ning Lu added. He saw Typhon hesitate and then added. I will additionally provide antidotes and protective gloves for harvesting. Thank you for your generosity. As soon as Typhon agreed, cheers erupted in the camp again. The thunderous cheers were even louder than when Typhon entered. Mortarion, wearing gray armor, strode into the camp. The heavy armor on him made a heavy sound as he walked. A dozen children, chained, walked into the camp in terror, driven by the gray-armored warriors. The barbarous people in the camp, seeing them, paused, then began to curse angrily. A stout barbarous woman forcefully threw a half-finished object she was polishing. The wooden object, already showing the rudimentary shape of a cup, smashed heavily on a boy's head. Witchcraft bastard, die. In the eyes of most barbarous people, hatred flickered. Ning Lu's gaze swept over all the barbarous people. He knew that because the overlords who had enslaved them for generations used psychic abilities, in the hearts of the barbarous people, anyone who used witchcraft deserved to die. These children brought back were all psychers. However, not everyone was like that. The Gene Seed Primarch keenly noticed that only Typhon and the dozen or so people closest to him did not have hatred in their eyes when looking at the children brought back. Ning Lu's gaze finally fell on the chain hanging from Mortarion's right little finger. The other end of the chain was tightly locked around a boy's neck. The boy struggled desperately, but it was useless. Every step Mortarion took, the boy would be pulled into the air. He stumbled and fell to the ground, again and again. The Gene Seed Primarch gazed at the child, then understood why Mortarion was pulling that child alone. He not only had resolute eyes and did not beg for mercy like the other children, but he also possessed powerful psychic talent. His instinctively driven psychic ability was stronger than that of the other children. Wherever he walked, the surrounding barbarous people instinctively avoided him. Chapter 439, Rescuing the Psyker from Mortarion's pyre. Ning Lu watched as Mortarion nodded slightly to him, then walked towards the stone pillar in the center of the camp. The barbarous people lit the fire pit, letting out excited shouts. Ning Lu frowned, thinking to himself. Open black lens bracket Mortarion brought these psychers to the camp to burn them, just as witches were burned on ancient Terra. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu looked at the children again, they clearly realized their tragic fate that was about to unfold. The Son of Death would not only bring death to Xenos but also to any psyker he encountered. Ning Lu's gaze finally rested on the child with strong will and outstanding psyker talent, and a thought involuntarily arose in his mind. Open black lens bracket should I save him, close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's gaze swept over Kara's Typhon, who was standing nearby. He opened his mouth but said nothing. He knew Typhon was a psyker, a descendant of an overlord and a human, inheriting his Xenos father's psyker talent. Typhon would not use his psyker abilities in front of Mortarion, but in secret, he had not abandoned his innate talent. Under the guidance of whispers, he honed his psyker skills. The future Death Guard was one of the very few legions without a librarian department, but Typhon, as first company captain, used his authority to gather a group of psychers. However, when the barbarous people prepared to judgment the warlocks, Typhon clearly had no way to rescue these psychers, as that would create a direct conflict between him and Mortarion. Ning Lu's gaze, for the third time, fell on the child who had not begged for mercy. He knew that if he wanted to save this child with extremely high psyker talent, he had to make a decision before Mortarion reached the stone pillar. Once the child was tied up, if he brought it up then, Mortarion would flatly refuse, and it would be impossible to save him without resorting to force. Ning Lu's mind raced, quickly weighing the options. Open black lens bracket the friendly transaction carried out earlier provided Mortarion with considerable help. Among the Primarch who supported the use of psychers, I would be more harmonious with him than Magnus and Sanguinius, and Jagatai who will return in the future. Saving these children will inevitably affect my relationship with Mortarion. But how important is this so-called friendship to me? Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's gaze shifted to Mortarion. Open black lens bracket when Mortarion returns to the Imperium and discovers that the Order Shadows has a large number of psychers, and learns that I am the core figure leading the use of the Librarian, he will certainly not become my friend. Moreover, Mortarion is highly likely to betray in the end. Although I used trade, rather than direct action, to eliminate his resentment caused by Huang Laohan's interference preventing him from completing his mission, this is only a partial factor in his fall. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu knew that Mortarion's dissatisfaction with the Imperium's harsh policies, and his feeling of being underutilized and unable to fully exert his abilities, were also important reasons. This was something that could not be changed, or rather, he was unwilling to expend great effort to change it. Open black lens bracket among the traitor Primarch, Mortarion is not worth my great effort to change. My most admired is Magnus, but he and his legion are deeply embroiled in the schemes of Zinchen the Weave, making him too difficult to win over. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu scrutinized the traitor Primarch. He could cultivate Beander, so combat power was not his consideration. More crucial were absolute loyalty and unique abilities. Open black lens bracket Perturabo seems to be the most worth saving. He was not loyal to the four gods after his betrayal. He possesses unique technical abilities. His binary information encoding ability can even write intelligent programs for a Titan from scratch, and he has good abilities in architecture, organization, and other aspects. If, during the grand birthday celebration, the Nation of Disorder can ensure the Gene Seed Primarch's absolute loyalty to me, it might be worth spending some effort to win him over. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu reined in his thoughts, refocusing on Mortarion. He thought of Typhon, Mortarion's most trusted person, who was Nurgle's chosen emissary. It was truly difficult for him not to fall. Ning Lu made his decision at this thought. Open black lens bracket since Mortarion and I will eventually be at odds, it's better to save these children first and gain a talent. Moreover, Mortarion is ultimately a rational person and can be reasoned with. Just as he weighed his options and made his choice before falling to chaos, his so-called aversion to sorcery is not absolute for Mortarion. Close black lens bracket. Thinking this, Ning Lu flashed in front of Mortarion and spoke. Mortarion, I want these children. Mortarion stopped, speaking coldly. All warlocks shall be subjected to judgment. Death is their deserved outcome. Move aside. Mortarion's pale hand rested on the wooden handle of his scythe. Immediately, the entire camp fell into an eerie silence. The elite warriors behind him tightly gripped their weapons in tension. Although they knew Ning Lu's power, they were willing to follow Mortarion on the path of death. It was Mortarion who had saved them from the Xenos and brought them liberation. The militiamen and other barbarous people were gripped by fear, their filters making it difficult to breathe. Ning Lu remained composed, speaking in the tone of a lawyer. Nothing is absolute. I will take these children. They will have no impact on Barbaris. If what you can gain can bring liberation to Barbaris and kill all overlords, isn't it worth it? Mortarion, with most of his face obscured by white cloth, showed no expression. Typhon stepped forward to Mortarion's side, breaking the eerie silence. He is right. Exchanging these children for the future of Barbaris is worth it. Mortarion removed his hand from the scythe, and after a moment of silence, he spoke. I want custom-fitted armor and weapons for myself. Mortarion still remembered how powerful the Xenos who raised him, Nikair, the Pale King, was. He wasn't sure he could win. The weapons he had forged, and those Ning Lu was now offering, could not fully unleash his abilities. If he had powerful weapons and armor, he was certain he could kill Nikair. It's a deal. Ning Lu stepped forward and took the chains from Mortarion's hand. With a squeeze, a small section of the chain was crushed. He walked towards the children, the iron chains breaking link by link. The youth stared blankly at the approaching black-armored giant, having understood the conversation between him and the Son of Death. He knew he was saved. The golden wings, illuminated by the fire pit, shone into his heart. He knelt on one knee and said, "You saved me. My life is yours. Ethan, forever loyal to you. Come with me." Ning Lu nodded slightly, speaking in a deep voice. Ethan rose and followed the black-armored giant through the crowd of pale-skinned people. 15 days later, Mortarion, clad in ceramite armor and carrying a 3-meter-long scythe, stood before Ning Lu. "You kept your promise." Ning Lu watched Mortarion turn and leave, thinking to himself. Open black lens bracket him, the transaction wasn't in vain. Besides the flora, fauna, and potion ingredients, at least my relationship with Mortarion isn't hostile. If he falls, he probably won't specifically retaliate against my territory. Most importantly, I didn't take the blame for Huang Laohan. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 440. Mortarion, the traded equipment is so useful. Barbaris's highest peak was perpetually shrouded in toxic gas. A great castle stood at the summit, completely obscured by the thick, poisonous fog. The people of Barbaris launched an attack against the sorceress overlords who enslaved them. This was the final battle for liberation. Mortarion held his scythe, and behind him were Typhon and the other elite warriors he had named the Death Guard. Unlike previous attacks, this time all the militia were also mobilized. This was partly because Mortarion needed every ounce of strength to conquer the last stronghold, and partly because the militia no longer needed to guard their villages. All the enemies were on this peak. Endless hordes of walking corpses emerged from behind the gray rocks, from behind the white trees, and from within the green toxic gas. Mortarion wore a specially designed respirator on his face. He knew that his alien foster father, Nikaer, the Pale King, was waiting for him at the summit. Fighting his way to the summit would consume much of his strength. Nikaer would only appear when he reached the densest part of the fog, where the overlords, who breathed the toxic gas, could exert their full power, and where he would be most vulnerable. But he was prepared. His mission had to be completed. Mortarion gripped his scythe tightly, swinging it to cut down dozens of walking corpses at the waist. His superhuman vision pierced through the horde of corpses, locking onto the gray-skinned sorceress overlord. The sorceress overlord held up his staff, and a green aura spread from him. The walking corpses' shambling steps suddenly became swift, and they charged towards Mortarion. Mortarion strode forward, his scythe dancing, and walking corpses fell in swaths. He advanced slowly and indifferently, his scythe blade tearing through rotten bodies, and broken limbs scattered like shrapnel. Mortarion broke through the walking corpse line, charged to the sorceress overlord, and easily cut him down. Mortarion did not shake his scythe to dislodge the grayish-white flesh and blood clinging to the blade. This was a battle that would last a long time, but he was resilient enough. Mortarion continuously swung his scythe. The great scythe carved a wide arc, and limbs fell like raindrops. After an unknown period, the gray fortress appeared in his sight. Mortarion's eyes gleamed. His mission was about to be completed. He crashed straight into the gray fortress, pulled out a combat nutrient vial, and his fatigued body was filled with power once more. His scythe danced even more swiftly, and swaths of gray bodies fell wherever he went. As Mortarion stepped into the fortress, memories from the forgotten corners of his mind became clearer. He followed these memories, searching for Nikaer. In his memories, his former alien foster father was most often found in palaces and sorcery laboratories. "You've come." A deep, familiar voice echoed in Mortarion's ears. He had already caught the stench of sorcery. "Stop playing those sorceress tricks." Mortarion looked around, trying to locate Nikaer by his voice. No escape, only retribution. Mortarion followed the voice, crashing through 4 walls in a row, finally seeing the familiar tall figure. A gray body, similar in height to his, holding a glowing, irritating staff. "My son, long time no see." As he spoke, dark green smoke spewed from his mouth. Mortarion's voice came through his respirator, "Die." He raised his scythe and charged at Nikaer. The scythe blade struck the green psychic shield, producing a loud bang. Nikaer's staff tapped the ground, and green pus spread rapidly, sweeping towards Mortarion like tentacles, grabbing at his former foster son. Mortarion's gray boots heavily stomped the ground, and his scythe swiftly cut down, shredding the smoky, poisonous tentacles. A resounding roar echoed, walls collapsed, and the gray figure was pushed out of the gray fortress. Toxic gas churned, and green psychic lightning streaked across the sky. The two of them turned the entire peak into a ruin. Nikare's head buzzed. He raised his hand to block the scythe blade and said with an astonished tone, "My son, you are even more capable than I imagined." Mortarion did not reply. He knew Nikare was trying to probe for information through his response. The respirator Ning Lu provided is very useful. If I had used the crude filter device I made myself, it would have already been damaged from inhaling the toxic gas, leaving me completely exhausted. In this mission battle, I will surely win. Mortarion continuously swung his scythe, striking the psychic shield. Amidst the crashing sounds, Nikare raised his staff. Blinding green light erupted, and countless green spikes shot towards the gray armor. Mortarion's armor rang with a harsh clanging sound. The green spikes impaled his green armor like a hedgehog, and the green venom coating the spikes crackled. Mortarion knew that if it had been the crude armor he had previously made, he would have been injured by that blow. The superior armor obtained through trade with Ning Lu had blocked this attack for him. But the danger was not over. He still couldn't withstand the thick toxic gas at the summit. Amidst the crackling of venom, palm-sized pieces of gray armor rapidly dissolved, instantly shrinking to the size of a finger and falling to the ground. Toxic gas poured into the armor through the gaps. "My son, you are still too young. Come back to my side, and I will continue to teach you." Nikare mockingly pulled away, taking a deep breath of toxic gas. The buzzing in his head seemed to lessen slightly. Nikare, having recovered some strength, had a cold glint in his eyes. His former foster son could actually fight him to this extent, which was completely beyond his expectation. The mental shock embedded in his mocking words was merely to break Mortarion's will. The name, Son of Death, was given by him, and now it should be he who brings about his end. Nikare grinned, raising his staff, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Just as he was about to launch a fatal blow, he saw Mortarion laboriously pull out a black vial from his waist and inject it into his body. Mortarion injected the most precious black vial, obtained from Ning Lu, into his body. The gene seed Primarch's body rapidly digested and absorbed the antidote created by Malina Scala in an instant. Mortarion felt the numbness in his body dissipate instantly, and his limbs moved smoothly according to his will. In a flash, he charged in front of Nikare, his scythe falling. Nikare frantically raised his hand, and a green psychic shield protected his pale body. With a loud crash, the scythe blade shattered the fragile psychic shield, striking Nikare's body. The last overlord of Barbaris, the Pale King, fell to the ground. "I have liberated Barbaris." Mortarion paused for a moment, then, hearing footsteps, he swung his scythe again, cutting off Nikare's head. He smiled and said to Typhon, "Except for the Pale King's head, all the other overlords' heads will be traded to Ning Lu. The focus of trade is no longer weapons, but antidotes and farming tools. No one will enslave us anymore. Barbaris will usher in a new era." Chapter 441, Cardinal, the jewel in Ferrus Manus's crown of conquest. After Ning Lu traded all the overlord heads with Mortarion, he spoke. "You have liberated Barbaris and brought new life to this world. Now it's time to face new challenges. You're coming with me to meet someone." "Who?" Mortarion asked in a deep voice. "The Emperor, your gene seed Primarch. He sent me to bring you to him." "The Emperor? Who is he?" Mortarion exclaimed in surprise, wondering who could command such powerful outsiders. Although he hadn't fought Ning Lu, he possessed abilities no less than his own, and yet this being called the Emperor could command him. The name, Emperor, reminded him of the overlords who enslaved humans, and Mortarion had no good feelings towards him. "You will know. Come with me." Mortarion looked at Ning Lu's back and followed. The Stormbird soared into the sky, passing through toxic fog clouds, and landed on the deck of the Emperor's flagship, Bucephalus. The scribes, strongly supported by Mikado, held cameras, or used data slates, or paper, to record this glorious moment. 854. M30, the king of Vostronia, by order of the Emperor, journeyed to Barbaris, the savage world of the Storm Star system, and recovered the 14th Primarch, Mortarion. He is the 14th Gene Seed Primarch to return. 5 days later, at the same moment the Dusk Raiders' fleet arrived at Barbaris, Ning Lu also ordered to set sail and return to Vostronia. Wangquan Shadow, Primarch's office. Ning Lu listened to Arsena Dun's report. After the second battle group received new recruits 3 months ago, its current strength is 15,200 men. While listening to the original body servant's report, Ning Lu pondered the preparations for the Cardinal campaign. Although he knew that Cardinal's entire society was based on a caste system, he decided to use the mortal Beyonders as a decisive force, but still needed Astartes to deter the opponent and buy time for the operation. Open black lens bracket. I remember that in the first phase of the Battle of Cardinal, the 13 Legion lost nearly 1,000 Ultramarines, and 500,000 auxiliary army, centered on the Marnian army and the Saanic infantry regiment, along with half the strength of the flame-patterned Titan Legion, failed to achieve decisive results. Afterward, Ferrus Manus led 70,000 Iron Hands, 6 million Imperial army and ecclesiarchy forces, and several Titan legions, quickly achieving victory. At least 100,000 Order Shadows, 1 million auxiliary army, and at least 1 Titan legion must be deployed to deter Cardinal's ruling castes and buy time. Close black lens bracket. Dispatch elements from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 6th, 11th, and 12th battle groups to assemble at Carium Gate in the last sun month of 855. Dispatch the Tiger Eye, Titan Legion, Night Houses Mordred and Veroni to assemble. The silver-haired Arsena recorded Ning Lu's orders, then asked curiously, "My lord, is there a powerful objective?" The various battle groups of the Order Shadows were distributed across various front lines in the Obscurus sector and the Limit Star territory. Most of the enemies they encountered did not require large-scale assembly. The last time was during the war with the Space Dwarfs. Indeed, ancient travelers called it the Necklace of Astride. After 5,000 years of development, the entire star system has a population exceeding 100 billion. Cardinal will be a new and important territory, a brilliant world, in the Legion's domain. Ning Lu silently thought to himself, open black lens bracket. Cardinal is the most brilliant jewel among the many industrial worlds conquered by Manus. Close black lens bracket. In December 855, Ning Lu came to the Nation of Disorder to confirm that the divination dice was fully charged and ready for a new divination. The information he knew about Cardinal quickly flashed through his mind. Open black lens bracket. Cardinal, a star system in the eastern Milky Way. The Cardinal star system has 11 planets, from the scorching 5th giant gas planet to the nitrogen ice planet, the 11th planet. There are also hundreds of moons and thousands of large asteroids within the star system. The entire star system is extremely industrialized. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's knowledge of Cardinal, its various castes, and its ruling high lords was quite detailed. After a few breaths, all the information had flashed through his mind, and he silently chanted in his heart. Open black lens bracket. The star chart from Carium Gate to Cardinal. The star chart from Carium Gate to Cardinal. Close black lens bracket. After chanting 11 times, he threw the divination dice from his hand. The triangular prism tumbled several times in the air before falling. The moment it landed in Ning Lu's open palm, a holographic-like scene unfolded before him. In the first sun month of 856, William Wood, wearing colorful, patched-up leather armor, walked through a mountain of chemical waste. The chemical waste came from various sources, but after reacting with each other, it was generally brownish. William's boots were mismatched, the left larger than the right, and neither fit properly. He had stripped them from the feet of different slave castes. Fortunately, the 2 boots were originally for left and right feet, and not both from the same side. Few creatures lived in the Waste Mountain. William hunted dog-like creatures with more flesh. William couldn't remember where he learned about dogs. There were no dogs in the factory where he was born. A red-furred, dog-like creature flashed in his mind, and he immediately pursued it, following the image in his head. William held a gun in one hand and a short knife in the other. He avoided mud pits and moved nimbly through the Waste Mountain, throwing the short knife, which was polished from metal scrap. To avoid alerting others, he didn't use his gun. The short knife whistled, embedding itself in the red dog's head. William stepped up to the red dog's corpse. He pulled out the short knife and skillfully began to process it. He had just peeled off the fur when a scene suddenly flashed in his mind, bullets coming from behind. Open black lens bracket, another one trying to snatch the spoils. Close black lens bracket. Food was a scarce resource in the garbage mountain that everyone would fight desperately for. William rolled forward abruptly, raised his gun, and fired. The bullet accurately struck the rogue's left eye. He quickly walked to the corpse, searching for loot. William's movements suddenly stopped. His mind was suddenly covered by a shadow. Just like the space above Cardinal was covered by toxic waste clouds. William's body trembled. He didn't know what it was. At the same moment, the Ramirez-class star fort was projected into the Cardinal star system through the Carium Gate. After repairing the fourth pair of space stations, the travel time through the Carium Gate was further shortened. In just 5 sun weeks, the Ramirez-class star fort and the Order Shadows fleet were projected from the northeast of the Obscurus sector to the eastern stellar region of the Limit Star territory. The orbital defense facilities of dozens of moons and hundreds of asteroids blared piercing alarms. The defenders were not panicked. Over 5,000 years, they had repelled countless attacks from Xenos and pirates, with only one substantial threat in their long history. The people of Cardinal believed they could repel the enemy's attack, just as they had in the past. The numerous turrets turned, aiming at the colossal objects that had suddenly appeared in the void. The High Lords issued a warning to the intruders, ordering them to leave Cardinal immediately. Chapter 442 Ning Lu's High Lord Plan. One black warship after another appeared in the Cardinal star system. Battlecruiser, Cardinal's shield. The void casts were released from various compartments. Their bodies were full of muscle, but their figures were no larger than a normal child. Their eyes were evolutionary remnants, covered by a black membrane. Their mouths were small and ovoid, just enough to fulfill the function of sucking and eating. They had black skin, covered by a secreted layer of human plastic, serving as a barrier against cosmic rays. The most unique cast design was their limbs. Each end had hands with extremely long fingers, convenient for operating equipment on void ships and for combat. On the bridge, the 5th adjutant from the servant caste reported to the commander. All manpower has been mobilized, including the trash that has been deemed expired. The high caste commander's gaze swept over the video screen with disgust, lingering for a moment on the low caste pariahs who were old or suffered from common inflammations like intestinal issues. Originally, upon returning to the spaceport for routine maintenance, human resources agencies would ensure that all low caste pariahs marked expired were recycled, their stripped muscles and crushed bones being their final contribution to Cardinal. Now, facing a powerful enemy, he had no choice but to activate these scrapped individuals to deal with the threat. The expired individuals walked out of their compartments numbly and obediently, returning to positions they thought they would never resume. The high caste commander immediately averted his gaze. "I don't want to see this trash anymore." "As you wish, esteemed sir." Within the Cardinal fleet, over 1 million expired individuals were completely erased from the information link. Even if they still existed, they would not be included in data collection or appear in any subsequent data statistics. Such waste was intolerable among most castes in Cardinal, but for the high caste, it was merely a small expenditure of resources, equivalent to a week's worth of contributions received from the subordinate castes. After the young high caste commander rid himself of negative emotions due to a negligible loss of property, he quickly reviewed the number of enemy ships on the video screen, the shocking figures piercing his eyes. As a military noble, born at the top, he also had to bear his inherent responsibilities. Compared to other castes, he was fortunate, able to choose to a certain extent. Abandoning Cardinal's vast and intensely competitive ground system, he chose the smaller but all-powerful Void Fleet, accepting over 16 hours of elite education daily, which allowed him to quickly grasp the situation within the star system before the pointer completed a full circle. Cardinal's main fleet was centered around cruisers, and his flagship was a battlecruiser. The abruptly appearing force, calling itself the Order Shadows, not only had colossal objects the size of satellites, but also over 400 ships in its fleet comparable in number to Cardinal's main battleships, and this number was continuously increasing. Throughout Cardinal's history, the most it ever had was 40 ships. What made him feel even more powerless to resist was that within the Black Fleet, there were also over 50 higher-tier warships, and they too were continuously increasing. "Submit a report to the High Lord," he said after deliberating for a few seconds. "In the most optimistic scenario, our space defenses can only hold for 3 days. After that, apart from Cardinal's head of the Star Ring, we will lose all space power." Finally, to demonstrate his own capability and seize maximum benefits in the post-war reconstruction of space power, he proposed a plan. The consular caste should be dispatched to contact and negotiate with the Order Shadows to buy time. During this time, maximize industrial output to turn our world into a strong fortress, using resources to exhaust the enemy and win the victory. The High Lords of Cardinal, upon receiving the High Caste Commander's report, quickly made a decision, providing a response before the 2 standard hour deadline requested by the Order Shadows. On the Wangquan Shadow, Ning Lu's lips curled into a mocking smile after hearing Arsena Dun's report. "What do you think they're planning?" Malin Ascala, dressed in a black Lord Hunter suite with forest green accents on her armor, caught the Black Emperor's fleeting, mocking smile. "You told us in the previous War Council that Cardinal possesses powerful ground forces and will not surrender. They also did not accept conditions such as opening a passage to Cardinal's head. The proposed negotiation is more like a delay tactic." The original body servant, dressed in a black Lord Hunter suite with white accents on his armor, nodded in agreement from the perspective of a student of ratiocination. "Our void power has an overwhelming advantage, yet they still haven't accepted any of our demands. They just want to prepare for war." Exactly. Ning Lu knew that Cardinal's High Lords would never surrender easily. He remembered they had stalled with Intap Amar, the negotiator sent by the Thousand Sons, for a long time before being discovered. Even after Ferrus Manus led the 10th Legion, demonstrating his immense power, and Cardinal suffered heavy losses, the High Lords who proposed negotiations were still dishonest. One High Lord personally launched an assassination attempt on Manus with an assassin. "I will give them a chance to negotiate, but only after crushing Cardinal's void power. After that, it will be your moment to shine. You must find and pinpoint all the High Lords." In Cardinal's caste system, all power is concentrated in the High Lords. The 413th Expeditionary Fleet, led by Ciceres, adopted the classic Ultramarines tactic of identifying the main enemy target, then quickly decapitating to destroy the enemy's military control structure, followed by rapid control of the local power system. This tactic failed because it was not suitable for Cardinal. Not only did Ciceres underestimate Cardinal's ground forces, but even if his plan succeeded, Cardinal would not collapse and surrender like other worlds. The people of Cardinal believed that the High Lords had existed since the establishment of their world. Ning Lu knew that not all High Lords had lived until now, but at least all of them had lived for over 1,000 years, controlling every aspect of Cardinal. As long as the High Lords remained, even if Ciceres decapitated all of Cardinal's military officers, Cardinal's army and entire society would continue to function. Ning Lu's plan was aimed at these High Lords. "We only have one chance. We must ascertain the location of all High Lords and complete the operation simultaneously. The number of High Lords will not exceed 10, but the exact number is difficult to determine now." The High Caste commander of Cardinal was horrified to discover that after the Order Shadows launched their attack, their advance was much faster than he had anticipated. The hellish firepower unleashed by the black ships dwarfed all of Cardinal's attacks. The fleet continued to advance at full speed, and he barely noticed each loss. Although the surveillance satellites and asteroid turrets tried their best to cooperate with the fleet and weaken the Legion, they failed to stop its lightning-fast charge. He stared blankly at the massive void beast at the center of the destructive vortex. even the fully powered sensor arrays couldn't capture how many torpedoes it was pouring into the void. His meticulously constructed interception fire network, consisting of 1 satellite, 5 asteroids, and 10 fast warships, was destroyed in the first wave of engagement. The burning wreckage of the void ship stung his eyes. The high caste commander gripped the experimental console, a single thought dominating his mind. Open black lens bracket. I wish I had a powerful void fleet. Close black lens bracket. At the same time, Ning Lu gazed at the holographic image. Cardinal's void forces were being rapidly crushed. This was predestined 5,000 years ago when they abandoned dangerous warp travel and could no longer maintain their dominion over star systems outside their pocket empire. The star system's void forces could not resist his legion's advance. On the second day of the Void War, the Ramirez-class star fort had already reached the orbit of Cardinal Prime. Cardinal Prime was the third planet from the star, the first of the 11 worlds to be colonized. Ning Lu led his guard, launching a boarding action on Cardinal's star ring, his first prize to seize. The landing craft rapidly flew towards the equatorial low-orbit space station clusters, and a massive orbital elevator system rose from the surface of Cardinal Prime, reaching into the sky and connecting to the orbital space stations. Cardinal Prime's star ring was much smaller in scale compared to the colossal star rings of Mars and Medusa, but it still looked miraculous. At Space Station 20, Flamini of the 6th Battle Group stepped off the deck of a black landing craft. Having recently become a monster, a vision flashed through his mind, and he immediately identified the enemies approaching from the left of the 3 passages: left, center, and right. Left. The guard members entered the left passage, and after passing through 2 compartments, Flamini suddenly shouted, "Fire!" The Order shadows raised their bedrock pattern bolters and opened fire. Dense barrages of bullets spewed from the muzzles before the void cast could even show their heads. But large portions of them missed, the adamantium warheads whistling over the heads of the void cast, who were no taller than a normal child. Flamini paused for a moment, not expecting that his early warning had failed to cause any casualties. The void cast raised their weapons and attacked the guard members. The Order shadows simultaneously lowered their muzzles, and boltgun fire tore through black flesh. The void cast surged forward like a tide, their human plastic bodies exploding into countless fragments, but their advance was relentless. Within their bioengineered bodies, after over 100 generations of evolution, absolute obedience to commands superseded everything, including any reason or fear. The military vice-consul's order to them was, "Go all out and kill every enemy." The void cast endured the dense barrage, raised their weapons, and fired dazzling beams of light at the black armor warriors. But unlike these unarmored sacrifices, the guard members were equipped with new Mark III power armor. The weakening of the rear armor resulted in a significant increase in frontal protection, suitable for use in narrow corridor environments like space stations. Dense energy beams struck the black armor, leaving only shallow marks. Flamini strode forward. Before his transformation, as a precognitive psyker, he already possessed keen senses. The transformation surgery amplified his senses, and after becoming a monster, the significant increase in his inspiration made him comparable to many barons of the royal court in this regard. Flamini raised his archaeological handgun, firing energy collected from the planet's radiation layer. Each scorching ray of destruction would pierce through several, or even a dozen, void cast. He was immediately focused on by concentrated fire. The void cast, evolved over 100 generations, had long formed the habit of prioritizing the elimination of the greatest threat. Countless beams shot towards Flamini, over 100 beams struck his heavy armor helmet. The helmet's sloped plates were designed to deflect shots to either side, and as the dazzling beams bounced off, they scattered around like sparks from cutting. Flamini ascended to Magnus's 4th level of mind, simultaneously tapping the runes at his waist. Dozens of runes lit up one by one, activating the warp circuit. Only a few of the newly equipped Mark III power armor among the Order shadows had one or more of the other modules added. As a royal court monk, he was one of them. Flamini used this time to apply the Black Crow techniques he had learned from the librarian, allowing his mind to detach from his body and achieve a transcendent state. His mind gently spun a wheel. The new warp imagery he found after becoming a monster was a wheel. As the wheel turned, fragments of future scenes emerged, floating around the wheel. The Black Crow technique's active precognition provided Flamini with a keen sense of the immediate future. He grasped that the Void Caste were rapidly moving through nearby passages, attempting to circle around and launch a surprise attack. This was a threat to the Order Shadows wearing Mark III power armor, which had reduced rear defense. Flamini immediately issued an order to the apprentice in his squad via the comm channel. The apprentice raised his hand and pressed it against the passage, opening a door. Two arbiters rushed in first, colliding with the Void Caste and crushing their bodies. Their blue-white heavy hammers swung repeatedly, smashing into the ground and pulverizing the Void Caste's human plastic. With the strategic foresight gained from precognition, Flamini captured reflections of the future, clearly reading the ebb and flow of the battle. The squad advanced at a speed exceeding that of other assault teams. A corner of the turning wheel in Flamini's vision suddenly shattered, simultaneously revealing an image. Open black lens bracket psychers. He's placed a psychic bomb in the power room. He's going to detonate the space station's power core. Close black lens bracket. Flamini rushed forward, treading through a series of ominous images as the wheel shattered. Scenes of the future and present intertwined in his eyes, making his steps somewhat unsteady. The other Order Shadows saw his erratic, swaying steps, and worry flickered in their black eyes. The psychic caste had just strode into the power room, directly encountering a squad of black armor warriors. His raised psychic shield had not yet covered his body when a dazzling beam of light shot towards him. The beam struck the psychic caste, blasting him into fragments, and at the same time, Flamini felt as if a star had shattered within him, and he thought to himself. Open black lens bracket. I have become a true monster. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu led his guard and captured Cardinal's star ring within 5 days. He stood in the control room of Space Station 1, listening to the archaeologist's report. Father, we have discovered in the control system that one of the modules it comprises is a completely new controller standard construction template. Through it, all space stations will be connected together, becoming a single entity. Ning Lu smiled and nodded, well done. As a powerful pocket empire, Cardinal retains many STCs from the dark age of technology. The Star Ring STC is a good start. Chapter 444. Swordtail Interceptors win air superiority. After Ning Lu rejected the requests for peace talks that Cardinal sent in a continuous stream once the battle began, the Order Shadows fleet dispersed, and the 6th Battle Group was ordered to attack 10 other worlds. Of Cardinal's hundreds of billions of people, most live on Cardinal Prime. The other 10 worlds combined, in terms of population, industry, and many other aspects, were still inferior to Cardinal Prime. From Space Station 1, Ning Lu monitored the entirety of Cardinal Prime via the Star Fortress, gathering all data there with a level of detail exceeding a full power scan from a Ramirez-class Star Fortin fleet. He looked at the main screen. The cold planet below was a dull iron gray. Ning Lu knew, even without looking at the screen, that the main component of this planet's surface was granite. This was why Cardinal's early settlers chose this third closest planet to the star to establish their colony. He then looked at the planet image synthesized from the numerous monitoring and sensing systems. The uneven mountains and the folds on the spherical surface were filled with fortresses and industrial buildings, and every tiny crack on Cardinal Prime was packed with layers upon layers of residences. Like most industrial worlds in the Imperium, Cardinal Prime had no liquid oceans or natural clouds, or any other landforms not modified by human will. Orbital elevators connected to the planet's artificial crust, but their continuous operation for over 4,000 years had ceased. Ning Lu saw that none of the orbital elevators had been damaged, and he already guessed the next action the High Lord would take. He gave orders to Arsena Dun. The High Lord already knew he controlled the Star Fortress, yet they had not taken action, surely intending to launch an aerial battle to regain control of the Star Fortress. Order all fighters to deploy. Compared to void ships, Cardinals fighters can be described as a sea of them. Although Cardinals fighters are numerous, not all of them can operate in a vacuum. A targeted strike will allow us to gain an advantage. After the silver-haired original body servant received the order, he reasoned, they want to delay time through air combat. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Therefore, after gaining air superiority, you will begin infiltration operations. Ning Lu then looked at other video screens to understand the situation around Cardinal. 3 damaged satellites were deliberately detonated under the High Lord orders. Their wreckage formed a slightly scattered asteroid belt in Cardinal Prime's orbit, concealing the scattered orbital dry docks, heavy industrial manufacturing plants, and material collectors within. Cardinal's High Lord attempted to preserve their orbital facilities or at least delay time through this method. One flight deck after another sounded battle alarms, and the roaring vibration of engines converged, like brewing thunder. Technicians moved between Stormbird gunships, busily making final preparations. The fuel supply for Swordtail interceptors was more precise, requiring both promethium-based fuel for atmospheric flight and anaerobic chemical ions for void flight, which absolutely could not be mixed. Formations of Swordtail interceptors were the first to fly out in groups from the Black Fleet, as early aircraft used by the Astartes Legion. It had an ancient lineage, capable of both light atmospheric and space operations. In its original design, the Swordtail had to be piloted by mechanically modified pilots, as ordinary pilots could not withstand the flight process. But after the Great Crusade began, and this fighter was extensively modified and equipped for the Astartes, their superhuman bodies were fully capable of piloting this high-speed light fighter without additional modifications. Nelson sat in the cockpit, his spine connected to the Swordtail interceptor via an interface tube. Current surged through the magnetic slingshots behind the launch ramp, and the magnetic coils flickered yellow. A deafening roar filled the air. Nelson tightened his restraint helmet, noticing that as the magnetic poles reversed, the magnetic force also rapidly reversed. The reactive force surged towards the tail of the aircraft, and the sudden acceleration squeezed Nelson between this force and his own weight, launching him off the flight deck along the ramp. His hands gripped the control stick, his gauntlets opened the throttle, and the wings vibrated violently. One Swordtail interceptor after another launched into the void, forming formations in space. The Black Order Shadows formation collided with Cardinal's fighters rising into the air. The rotary missile launcher on the Swordtail interceptor's belly whistled as it fired, hitting an enemy aircraft, while Nelson forcefully pulled the control stick to the right. The highly agile Swordtail interceptor sharply turned to evade, the machinery releasing forward momentum during the turn. Compared to shuttles and Stormbirds, the performance of the Swordtail interceptor was incredibly high. Its turning speed and responsiveness to touch were exceptionally good, agile in the air as if in a vacuum, and even more so in a vacuum, describable as silky smooth. A dense barrage of bullets from dozens of enemy aircraft grazed the top of the plane. But this extreme exploitation of performance also made Nelson feel the pressure on his modified superhuman body. The swaying center of gravity indicated that Nelson would soon roll in the opposite direction, and when he hit another group of aircraft, he opened the throttle with his hand. At the same time, his power boots released the rudder pedals, and the interceptor returned to his control, plummeting into the brass-colored industrial exhaust atmosphere, tumbling and weaving among enemy aircraft. The Swordtail interceptor was too complex, it was very light, yet underpowered, and its design was not originally well suited for a propulsion system that could operate in various atmospheric conditions. As soon as Nelson's fighter plunged into Cardinal Prime's atmosphere, he realized he had to switch to promethium fuel propulsion. He quickly completed the switch, then gripped the control stick with both hands, as if holding an airplane model, weaving through enemy aircraft. Each side of the Swordtail interceptor's fuselage had a set of twin-linked rapid-fire laser cannons, firing a series of shining beams. Cardinal's fighters falling into the atmosphere were hindered by the atmosphere, their speed rapidly decreased, and fuel was consumed quickly. Nelson quickly achieved 12 kills as if target practicing, then, surrounded, he chose to rapidly ascend, where the density of enemy aircraft in the airspace above was lower. Nelson immediately switched to the ion propulsion system, flying out of the yellowish-brown clouds. Nelson piloted his aircraft, constantly shuttling back and forth between the atmosphere and the void. Combat required many tedious and precise operations, but Nelson was capable of handling such frequent maneuvers. The performance of the Swordtail Interceptor was perfectly utilized, while Cardinal's fighters could not smoothly switch in the void. Cardinal's fighters rushing from the yellowish-brown atmosphere into the void lost control due to inertia, their speed surged, and fuel was rapidly consumed. After several repetitions, Nelson grasped the pattern of Cardinal's fighters, and the aiming reticle of his attack system firmly locked onto the enemy aircraft. Nelson felt the soaring fighting spirit of the machine spirit, and in their shared rhythm, he danced his hands up and down, shooting down one enemy aircraft after another that tried to rapidly evade. Fuel alarms sounded faster than ammunition alarms due to the repeated switching. Nelson was forced to return. He looked at the battlefield left behind, gripping the control stick tightly, thinking with reluctance. It is said that the Mechanicus is researching an advanced high-speed suborbital multi-purpose fighter vehicle, capable of intercept operations from suborbit to high altitude. I really hope to switch to a new fighter soon. After replenishing fuel and ammunition, Nelson eagerly returned to the battlefield. Relying on combat stimulants, Nelson completed over 1,000 combat flights, after which the Order Shadows gained control of the air battle. The strategy of luring Cardinal's fighters into the void and exploiting the Swordtail Interceptor's performance proved effective. Stormbirds and other atmospheric aircraft took over from the Swordtail Interceptors, becoming the main force in the air battle. Chapter 445, The Machines, Battlefield Deployment. Flamini, the deputy officer who returned to the 6th Battle Group from the Guard, disembarked on the 11th planet, the outermost planet from the Cardinal star. The low-gravity environment of the 11th planet made Flamini's first step, as his power armor boots touched down, feel somewhat unsteady. With his second and third steps, his body and Mark III power armor quickly adapted and adjusted. Flamini, who had been operating in a space station not long ago, quickly adapted to the current environment, which was similar. Having just been promoted to a machine, his eyes flickered, penetrating the ruins of the ancient battlefield, tracing back through the flow of time. Compared to before, when the roulette spun, he saw more and more complete information. Flamini's gaze pierced back 2,500 years, combining with the data his gene father had provided, to trace the process of the rift's birth on the 11th planet. It was left behind when the green-skinned invaders from beyond the star system's edge briefly occupied Cardinal's outer worlds. A smile touched Flamini's lips. He felt the weight of history and the power of the Legion. That was the only invasion Cardinal had faced since the establishment of its pocket, but it was stopped at Cardinal's 11th planet. Hundreds of years later, the bioengineered warriors were born, and since then, Cardinal's surface has never been invaded again. The Order Shadows were opponents of an entirely different scale. At that very moment, 25,200 Order Shadows from the 6th Battle Group were simultaneously attacking 4 planets. This wasn't even the 6th Battle Group's entire force. There were still 3,600 patrolling the Colony Ned New district. Flamini shifted his attention from the past back to the present. His mind moved the spinning roulette, his consciousness transcending the unfolding assault, and fragments of the future appeared in his eyes. Compared to his chaotic mind when he was a monster, not long ago, his mind was much clearer after becoming a machine. Advance. The chaotically arranged houses, streets, and coiled transformer spires were covered in black stains left by industrial residue. A group of people wearing gray padded bulletproof armor and visored helmets, carrying assault weapons, charged out, protected by numerous heavy shields. More surged out through cracked walls, broken archways, and partially collapsed staircases. These staircases led to residential floors, which stretched dozens of levels horizontally and hundreds vertically. Orbital bombardment was limited in scope, causing no destructive damage to the Legion's future assets. Flamini surveyed his surroundings. Every warrior caste transformed into data, surging through the machine's mind. The firepower of each team member was also factored into the machine's calculations, and he issued commands through the communication channel. Gatherman Squad, Mark Zone 2. Taravanis Squad, Mark Zone 5. Minakia Squad, Mark Zone 6. The 6th Battle Group was stationed in the Colony Ned New District, and many squads were named after various worlds. 3 squads, following the deputy officer's orders, extended their lines. The keen perception of the near future endowed the machine with a comprehensive overview of the situation. He could even taste the enemy's numbness. The deputy officer, acting as the brain, mobilized his 3 squads to intercept the warrior castes. Set traps. 2 hunters took fragmentation grenades from their waists and placed bombs near promethium fuel barrels. Each squad in the Order Shadows battle groups currently had royal court monks who had been granted different powers by the Gene Father. Among Flamini's 3 squads, 2 had hunters. Flamini oversaw the entire situation, and at the optimal distance he had foreseen, when the enemy line reached 400 meters, he shouted, "Fire!" They raised their bedrock pattern bolters and unleashed a dense barrage of fire at the warrior castes. The adamantium rounds pierced through bulletproof shields, instantly tearing thousands into pieces. Boom, boom, boom. The first warrior caste stepped into the trap, and the fragmentation grenade exploded, flames engulfing the flying shrapnel, which shot into the crowd. Promethium burned fiercely among the warrior castes. They dared not defy the orders of the military advisor and deputy consul, not even daring to stop their advance. 3 warriors swung their longswords, cleaving the warrior castes apart. Amidst the continuous explosions, pale, gaunt faces appeared from the floors, their expressions only producible by 200 generations of evolved castes. They were hairless and pale-skinned, typical of most genetically modified lower castes in Gardinal. They wore mass-produced green jackets and trousers, their faces expressionless, their eyes vacant. The light of the human soul barely penetrated their skin, showing any external manifestation on their bodies, as if they came from the same assembly line that manufactured their clothing. Those allelic genes representing individualism or empathy, passed down secretly through generations, were completely suppressed by conditioning and psychotropic drugs. The lower castes carried weapons like iron tongs or dismantled steel pipes. They swung their crude weapons, joining the battle. Tens of thousands of lower castes, outnumbering the warrior castes, poured in, making the battle even more chaotic. Flamini's command extended to every Order Shadows. Data on both enemy and friendly forces surged in his mind, and the 30 runes of the divination box continuously adjusted under his direction. The warrior castes, evolved for over 100 generations, seized the opportunity created by the lower castes. Dozens of warrior castes formed assault formations and launched attacks. The machine calculated rapidly, striving to compensate for the defensive weaknesses in the line. The extremely high inspiration of 3 monsters compensated for any shortcomings in calculations and unexpected occurrences. They identified dangers and reacted in time. Gardinal castes, tens of thousands strong compared to the 3 squads, launched wave after wave of attacks, pounding against the black armor warriors' line. Flamini's deployment concealed the vulnerable rear armor of the 3 squads, and he timely called for a Stormbird to airdrop ammunition supplies before running out of ammo. Just as Flamini was repelling wave after wave of enemy attacks, after the Order Shadows gained air superiority over Cardinal Prime, groups of Stormbirds launched assaults on the surface. A spearhead formation of Gardinal heavy fighters attacked the Stormbird formations of the Order Shadows. They directly broke through the fighter defense and pierced into the gunship transport array. The suicidal attack immediately drew laser cannon fire. The Stormbird gunships roared open fire on the Gardinal heavy fighters, their gunfire shattering one heavily armored fighter after another, but their formation did not change, nor did they attempt to evade. As the Stormbirds continued to engage, they released their cargo. Upon landing, the Order Shadows immediately attacked the orbital elevator device. At the same time, hundreds of shadow pattern Stormbirds, mixed among countless Stormbirds, flew towards their respective targets. Arsena Dun, Malin Ascala, Maria Kurnikova, Tierney, and other Beyonders each led their teams, disembarked, and began their missions. Chapter 446, The Witch. After Cardinal sought peace for the 104th consecutive time, Ning Lu finally agreed to peace talks. Cardinal Prime had no roads within its capital city. The city's transportation system was composed of a network of wide tracks for bullet-shaped trains, and narrow pedestrian skybridges connecting transport stations to buildings. Maria Kurnikova was dressed in a black Lord Hunter suite. The chief forgemaster and Malavalis offered Maria two design options, based on the Macatan and Yeld types, for her to choose from. She chose the Macatan type, which could spray flexible silk threads. Purple patterns were engraved on the black armor, and its raised, sharp claws gleamed with a cold light. Maria stepped out of the shadows and stood on the pedestrian skybridge. Bald, pale-skinned lower castes walked by, their expressions numb, their gazes lingering briefly on the beautiful woman who had suddenly appeared, but they did not stop. For lower castes, who had undergone over 200 generations of evolution, the pursuit of beauty had long been eliminated by more efficient choices. "You haven't eaten for 2 days, have you?" The witch's voice was magnetic, and combined with her words, it made the lower caste stop. For these lower caste individuals, food was more appealing than a charming appearance. After being deliberately guided to lose most desires, the craving for food was placed only beneath the absolute belief in serving the higher castes with piety. The witch watched as many people stopped, a subtle glint flashing in her eyes. Her 380 assassins and 520 apprentices launched attacks on the surrounding food and water factories, with dozens of factories exploding into ruins. Normally, the consul would have promptly scheduled production, and Cardinal's vast capacity would have quickly remedied the problems. However, after losing most of its fleet and even more fighter jets, the entirety of Cardinal Prime was affected, and the remaining production capacity was reallocated for war preparations and to maintain the dignified lives of the higher castes. Maria began to incite them. "I can tell you why. Because those factory castes are giving the food that rightfully belongs to you to the consul castes. The consul castes are merely servants of the High Lord, they should not possess such power." The witch surveyed the crowd, seeing suppressed anger on their faces. The lower caste people were not entirely without rebellious consciousness, they were merely bound by biochemical shackles. But biochemical shackles also needed to be maintained, and now there weren't enough enforcers to maintain them, giving her too many opportunities to incite. "Follow me and see for yourselves." After Maria finished speaking, she turned and walked towards her target. The lower castes silently followed behind her. Maria led the group to the bullet-shaped train station, where they encountered the first team of enforcers. Maria activated her built-in grappling hook launcher and leapt into the high shadows. The lower caste stared blankly at the dome as the spindle-legged net-toothed gun sprayed flexible silk threads. The threads quickly hardened to the strength of steel wire upon contact with the air, firmly trapping a dozen enforcers. "You lowly slaves," the enforcer captain shouted loudly, and all the lower caste's bodies froze as if paralyzed, unable to move. His words were cut short by the descending black shadow, and the chilling glint of the blade at the end of its arm. The excellent reflexes developed over 100 generations of evolution in the enforcer caste allowed him to quickly roll away, hiding behind other enforcers. Maria charged forward swiftly, swinging her sharp claws, tearing the enforcers apart. At the same time, a transparent ice crystal spear suddenly appeared, striking the enforcer captain's position. The white frost created by the witch spread, trapping the enforcer captain. Immediately, her sharp claws tore through the enforcer captain's body. With the enforcer captain dead, the lower castes regained their ability to move. Maria looked around at everyone, a slight curve to her lips, as she saw a glimmer of light in the eyes of the lower caste people. Open black lens bracket, incitement, has begun to take effect, and the spirit of resistance has started to awaken. Compared to the legendary High Lord and consuls, the enforcers were the most powerful and highest caste individuals they could see, and by easily killing an enforcer would shake their entire world. close black lens bracket. The lower castes boarded the train. While out of their sight, numerous assassins sprinted onto the bullet-shaped metal train. Several assassins skilled in driving pushed the control levers, and the bullet-shaped train rumbled, heading towards its destination. The lower castes were no longer as numb as before. They eagerly crowded at the observation windows, looking outside. The observation function of Cardinal's trains was placed after many other functions. The lower castes curiously looked out the window. At first, there was nothing different, just transport trains, transport stations, and tall buildings. Next, differences began to appear in their vision. The number of floors in the tall buildings decreased. Steel buildings rapidly transformed into estates filled with greenery. The train ignored warnings and continued to drive, crashing all the way to the traffic consul's mansion. This was the only consul mansion the train could reach. "Follow me." Maria led the lower castes off the train. She saw the guards already assembled and ready. The witch raised her right hand and wiped it across her face, instantly making her appearance and the Lord Hunter suite become hazy and blurred. The witch recited a Dun language incantation while sprinkling a handful of glowing powder on herself. The witch's figure began to disappear little by little, her outlines seemingly completely erased by an eraser. Moments later, when the lower caste saw a large plume of black flames fall among the guards. The witch appeared behind the guards using invisibility. She swung her claws, tearing the guards apart. The lower castes watched in astonishment as the tall, powerful woman swiftly killed the strong guards. Maria's figure once again disappeared from sight, entering the traffic consul's mansion. The witch rushed into the mansion. She saw bronze mirrors hanging on the walls. A torrent of raging flames smashed towards Maria, causing the granite floor to explode and debris to fly. The psionic caste raised a flame shield, vigilantly looking around. He suddenly looked behind him and saw a woman in black armor leaping out of the mirror. Black flames coiled around the witch's claws, and a large burst of ice frost erupted around the psionic caste. Ice frost collided with the raging flames, and the flames quickly receded. The witch's claws gripped the psionic caste's body, and black flames destroyed his right arm. At this moment, a cold command sounded from the loudspeaker. Self-destruct. The psionic caste unhesitatingly carried out the traffic consul's order. His psionic energy detonated the psionic bomb on his body. Boom. Amidst the explosion, the witch's figure leapt out of a mirror at the edge of the hall. The shockwave hit the Lord Hunter suite, and the witch rolled to avoid the shockwave, then disappeared into the hall again. Moments later, when the lower castes entered the mansion, they saw the tall woman in black armor, carrying a person dressed in luxurious clothes. Just by seeing the person in her hand, they instinctively felt fear. Maria discarded the traffic consul and loudly declared, "He is your traffic consul." With a swing of her claws, she tore the traffic consul into several pieces. A light ignited in the eyes of the lower castes. They rushed to the dining hall and picked up weapons. Maria felt a melting sensation within her body. Detective coordinates the operation. The diplomatic consuls dispatched by the High Lords boarded the aircraft and flew towards the Wangquan shadow under the watchful eyes of black gunboats. As they saw black warships one after another in the void, similar thoughts arose in their minds. If only they also had such a powerful fleet. But the development direction decided by the High Lords could not be changed, and abandoning dangerous warp travel was a wise choice. Ning Lu on the bridge stared at the temporal screen. No one among the Cardinal diplomatic delegation matched the appearance of the three-person team he remembered who assassinated Ferris Manus. After a moment of thought, he said to Pell, "You represent me in meeting the Cardinal people." Ning Lu knew that the High Lords of Cardinal achieved mutual connection and fusion of consciousness through a series of consciousness matrices, and they manifested in different bodies with different personalities and behavioral patterns. However, if they wanted to assassinate him, they would definitely send High Lords wearing Holy Casket battle suits. Only by relying on particle weapons and other dangerous armaments mounted on the Holy Casket battle suits could they threaten a Gene Seed Primarch. Not finding any figures taller than a dreadnought in the crowd indicated that the High Lords had not yet put themselves at risk to assassinate him. Ground combat had not yet fully erupted, and the Cardinal people, who had not unleashed their own power, were engaged in ground warfare with the Order's shadows. The High Lords had not realized their own strength. Shedan had infiltrated the Cardinal Prime to track down the High Lords, so Pell was best suited to represent him in negotiations. As you command, my lord. Pell accepted the order. A moment later, Cardinal's diplomatic team was led to the reception room. After taking their seats, a diplomatic caste member, dressed in splendid robes and whose appearance was designed to match his duties, spoke. I come on behalf of the High Lords, hoping to reach a consensus with you. Pell Kasielny, Lord of the Order Shadow's 11th Battle Group, representing Lord Ning Lu. Lord. The diplomatic caste member was stunned. After some effort to understand the position of Lord, he presented his demands. Our side hopes that the Order Shadows will immediately cease all hostile military actions. His eyes were filled with anger. Including those activities targeting our cities, this will not benefit the upcoming negotiations in any way. I believe you also hope for Cardinal to resolve its differences with the Empire and reintegrate. Upon hearing this, Pell immediately realized that the activities of Shedan and others on the surface were having an effect. He had always known that the Black Emperor had other subordinates besides the Order Shadows. They acquired abilities similar to the royal court monks, including Arsena, Malina Scala, and others. Pell's fragmented childhood memories still recalled many legendary stories of Vostronia. This time, the Black Emperor entrusted the conquest of Cardinal to Arsena and others. Compared to the Order Shadows, they were less conspicuous and could more easily find High Lords other than Stredricon, who commanded the armed forces. As for reintegration, he only cared about Cardinal pledging allegiance to the Black Emperor. Pell did not correct the diplomatic caste member's words. He said with a half-smile. If you cannot even suppress a rebellion, you might as well surrender early. Pell's blunt words made the diplomatic caste member's expression change. He remained silent for a moment before speaking. Of course, we can suppress the rebellion. There's no need for your side to concern yourselves. Then let us begin the negotiations. Pell said calmly. He was well aware of his responsibility. Negotiations were merely a means to buy time, allowing the original body servants and others to pinpoint the High Lords' locations. At the same time, on the iron-gray surface of the Cardinal Prime. In a consular residence in the capital, Arsena had taken control of the building amidst the riots. The reader beside him nervously and rapidly read all data documents, including electronic personnel files sent by the marauders. Even if they limited the scope to the high caste range, it still amounted to millions. The student of ratiocination examined the content filtered by the reader, attempting to find clues within it. Arsena reviewed all reports, including those received from Malina Scala, Maria Kurnikova, Tierney, and others. Malina had pinpointed a biochemical base and was preparing to launch an attack. Maria ordered the assassins to precisely eliminate high caste commanders, and then she and Dementiva, along with 15 instigators, lectured the food-deprived lower castes, instigating them to revolt. Tierney's marauders infiltrated Cardinal to steal important data. Arsena ascended to Magnus's first level of mind and put himself in a detective state, searching through numerous materials. His main search targets were of two types. The first type was recorded caste families who had served as High Lords. The detective, having learned the High Lords' method of sustaining life from the Black Emperor, began to deduce based on related aspects. As a master of deduction, the detective quickly found a breakthrough. The Black Emperor told him that consciousness transfer had special requirements and could not be transferred at any time. Combining this with Cardinal's situation, the detective focused on several key nodes. What physical and background requirements were needed to host a High Lord's consciousness, thus tracking all known High Lord birth castes. The storage location of the consciousness matrix before transfer, biochemical laboratories that might preserve related technology. Although Arsena didn't know where these would be stored, they were most likely in ancient buildings from millennia ago. After examining all the data, the detective immediately issued operational orders. He pulled out his communicator and first sent a message to Malina. The Papu caste controls the biochemical field. Their laboratories preserve a large amount of data for manufacturing various castes. I understand. I will take action against their laboratories. This will help us find the High Lords. Malena's voice came from the communicator. The High Lords, biochemical castes have sustained Gardinal for 5,000 years. This data will be very valuable. After hanging up the communication, Arsena sent a message to Tierney. I'm sending you a set of coordinates. There's a building in the capital that's over 5,000 years old, one of the oldest buildings in the Cardinal Prime. But there are no records of it. On the rail transit map Maria found at the traffic consul's home, it and the surrounding area are listed as restricted zones, but it's not one of those high caste residences. Finally, he sent a message to Maria. The Gardinal people will certainly take action to suppress the riots. The Lucifer Blackguard and Katachan warriors will support you. I have already sent your communication frequency to them. The Black Emperor placed the auxiliary army elites under Arsena's command to hunt the High Lords. Don't worry, I'll make sure they focus their attention on us. Maria understood her mission. After issuing the orders, Arsena instructed Fulilin, the only psychic among his retinue. Follow me. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.